presidential address. I would like to speak for or against agenda item. You will then be given 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Again, disrespectful, rude, or disruptive speech or actions will not be tolerated. Such speech or actions, as well as verbal attacks on any person, may result in the individual without notice forfeiting the remainder of his or her allotted time. At this time, we're getting ready for the invocation, and our pastor for the day is Pastor Carl Hetler from Emmanuel South Bend United Methodist Church. I ask everyone, would you please stand and bow your heads?
Giver of all good gifts, we are grateful for this day, for this place of public gathering, for our leaders and representatives, for each member of the community here and online, for each breath in and out, deeply in, deeply out, that we take. We pray for your gift of justice. You are the chief judge, and we all are accountable to you. May we all treat people equally without prejudging them, seeking equity and opportunity. May we consider the needs of the vulnerable, marginalized, and ignored. Forgive us for the times we have picked sides, defended wrongs, supported unjust systems, or looked the other way. We pray also for your gift of love. You are the one of perfect harmony and loving relationship. May we show love for each other in this meeting, in our neighborhoods, in our workplaces, in our places of recreation. Help us to love ourselves and even love our enemies. It's not easy. Guide us in love. Forgive us for when we've been selfish, hurtful, angry, or mean. We pray also for your gift of wisdom. You are the word of truth, reality in a confusing world. May we seek your guidance in all difficult decisions made here today. May we seek your wisdom in what we say and leave unsaid. Forgive us for our ignorance, our bubbles, our indifference. Justice, love, wisdom. Giver of all good gifts, we pray in many different ways. I ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Now repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, everyone, we're getting ready to get started. Clerk Toronto, please give the roll call.
Councilmember McBride,
Present.
Councilmember Dr. Bonninger,
Present.
Councilmember Bolden Simpson,
Present.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Present.
Councilmember White,
Present.
Councilmember Dr. Davis,
Present.
Councilmember Gooden Rogers is excused, Vice President Niskoski,
Present.
President Lee.
Present.
8 council members present.
All right, now we will have a report from the subcommittee on minutes from our meeting, May 26, 2026.
To the Common Council of the City of South Bend, the subcommittee has inspected the minutes of the May 26, 2026 meeting of the council and found them to be correct. Therefore, we recommend the same be approved.
I will now entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. All right, at this time, I am going to ask for a motion to interrupt the agenda. Amend, I'm sorry, amend the agenda and ask that we move our committee of the whole up and then the third reading. And then we'll come back to the repertory justice final report.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. All right. Yes, this is the committee of the whole now.
Okay, the Committee of the Whole is now in session. This is the portion of the council's meeting where bills are given a second reading and public hearing before a committee made up of all 9 council members. All bills set for this second reading and public hearing have previously been given a first reading and a committee hearing prior to this evening's meeting. In addition, we will hear from the chairperson of the standing committee where the bill was discussed and the results of that discussion. If the proposed ordinance, is a zoning ordinance, a report from a staff member will be given. In all other situations, the formal presentation on the proposed ordinance will immediately follow the committee report. The formal presentation shall be untimed. So we need to have a committee report in reference to Bill 28-26.
That was you.
And that was brought forward with a favorable recommendation. So now I'll put my Committee of the Whole hat back on and ask Clerk Toretto to read the bill.
Public hearing on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, to vacate the following described property: the southern 3.7 feet of Napoleon Street between St. Louis Boulevard and St. Peter Street.
Okay, thank you so much. And we have a presenter.
Good evening, council members. Chris Godlewski, Evan Marsh Consultants, 315 West Jefferson Boulevard, South Bend, Indiana, 46601. I represent Dave and Jennifer Ludwig. Also, the secondary home buyers on this lot is Andy and Tara Slaggert. Their home builder is here, who's building both homes, and there's also some supportive members in the audience as well. As by committee, staff, and Board of Public Works meetings so far, this has been favorable recommendations to this point. We appreciate that and respect that very much. This 3.7 foot request widens this lot to make the maximum zoning lot in this area. And being split and allowed 2 homes, this will allow for the first home to be removed and 2 homes to be constructed to raise property values and create a different aesthetic for this site. That tree lawn in the front, if this area is vacated, goes from roughly about 24 to 20 to 21 feet. So there's still a sizable green area between the built area and the street. That's it on some technical questions or presentation. Unless you have more questions, I'd like to turn this over to the home builder and then the landowner so they can give some comments and then we can answer any specific questions you have.
That would be wonderful. If you want to come forward and state
Thank
your name and address. I know we just heard you about 15 minutes ago, but if you could give us a refresher and go through this, this is the formal
Sure,
meeting.
thank you. My name is Craig Tellman with Capstone Design and Build. We're located at 52307 North Fur Road in Granger, Indiana. We've designed 2 homes for this particular site, and these homes are in keeping with the integrity of the surrounding homes around them. And I think you'll find that they fit in nicely with the neighborhood and give a nice feel for what we're doing. We've built other homes in this area, so we're well aware of all the requirements that go into building in this neighborhood. And I think we've accomplished that with the designs.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else from your team that would like to make a comment or the other partner?
Well, council persons, I'm David J. Ludwig of 15700 Lake Forest Court in Granger, and I'm speaking in favor of this bill. I am representing my wife, Jen Ludwig, and Andy Slager, who is also here. A co-petitioner in this effectively is the Greater Holy Temple Church, which is the other address on the petition, and they're at 710 Napoleon. And Pastor Ross is here.
Can you talk to the mic?
Okay, so are you, we haven't opened up the public hearing. Are you just here to talk on behalf of as a petitioner?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we're clear.
Sure. Yes. And I just want to say simply thank you for hearing our petition and wanted to let the council know that we're really excited about the prospect of building homes and moving from Granger and South Bend to be closer to downtown and Notre Dame. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Questions?
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask the council if they have any questions. Thank you for your presentation. I'll bring it to the council members and
Questions?
then we'll open it up for the public hearing. And you have a question, Dr. Davis?
Yes, two. One, could you restate again, sir, what you had shared a bit again earlier this afternoon regarding your concerns
Sure.
that you shared? Because I thought that was very good.
Yeah, thank you very
And
much for
if
asking.
you just can talk about that with the sidewalks and how the design.
Yeah, right now the sidewalks are not totally aligned and not say we can accomplish all that, but we need to get them back in some alignment so that you can have a nice, easy access. Right now, there's quite a variation between the sidewalk across the street from us on Napoleon. And this way you'll get a handicap ramp as well as getting them more to be somewhat in alignment.
So there would be more of uniformed, how
Yeah.
they'd be out there more
It will help the
symmetric.
neighborhood immensely, I
Okay.
think, to do this.
And you mentioned about the ADA compliant issues. Could you elaborate more on that, please?
Sure. The ADA will happen at the corner and there'll be the ADA ramp. That's usually like a reddish color with the dimples on it. And that will be more accessible for people who happen to be handicapped.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
sir.
for asking.
Oh, you're welcome. I have no further questions.
Okay, thank you. I see Councilmember Bowden Simpson, you have a question?
Not a question. If I have this fan behind me and I am hearing impaired, so if people could get a little closer to the mic, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there any other question from council members? If not, I'm going to go to the public hearing. Oh, President Lee?
Yes, thank you for your investment in the neighborhood. And both of these facilities will be owner occupied, and you all will make sure that it's not for Airbnb or anything like that, correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead. I see no other questions signaled from council members, so we're going to go to the public hearing. The public hearing, we will see if there is any wishing to speak for the bill. Bill 2826. Sir, if you could state your name and address for the record.
My name is Pastor Lee Ross, 2230 Huey Street, South Bend, Indiana. Church, 710 Napoleon Street, South Bend, Indiana, 46617. Greater Holy Temple. Speaking for the bill 2826, in agreement and approval for it. It is our neighbor right next door, and it will continue to grow the neighborhood and make the neighborhood continue to look more appealing. The sidewalk movement of 3.7 feet will not affect the church. We still have a lot of greenery. We still have a lot of sidewalk as well. So we are in approval for 2826.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Do you see anyone?
I do not see anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the bill in person or online.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone wishing to speak against the bill? I see no one in the chamber at this time. Is there anyone
That
online?
is correct. I do not see anyone in the chambers or online wishing to speak in opposition.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion for Bill 2826 and bring it back to the council. Is there any comments you would like to make? Otherwise, I will entertain a motion regarding the bill.
Second.
To bring this to the full council with a favorable recommendation. And thank you for the second.
Second.
So there has been a motion to bring this before the full council with a favorable recommendation and duly seconded. Clerk Torado, could you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Bolden Simpson,
Aye.
Councilmember McBride,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan,
Aye.
Councilmember Dr. Beininger,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Dr. Davis,
Aye.
Vice President Niskoski,
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
I have 8 ayes.
Thank you. Bill 2826 will be sent to the full council with a favorable recommendation. And at this time, I will close out the committee of the whole and revert back to the full council.
Thank you, Vice President Niskoski. Bills on third reading. The full council is now in session, and this is the portion of our meeting where bills are given a third reading and action is taken regarding the bills that were heard during the committee of the whole. Clerk Toronto, will you give the bill a third reading?
Third reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, to vacate the following described property: the southern 3.7 feet of Napoleon Street between St. Louis Boulevard and St. Peter Street.
All right. Vice President Niskowski, is there a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole?
Yes, there is. This was given a favorable recommendation to the full council.
I will now entertain a motion.
Second,
There's been a motion and a second. Clerk Toronto, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dr. Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas Morgan.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
aye.
Councilmember McBride.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolden Simpson.
Aye.
Councilmember Dr. Bidinger.
Aye.
Vice President Niskowski.
Aye.
President Lee.
Aye.
8 ayes.
All right, the bill is passed. All right, now, those for that bill, you're now released.
You're good to go.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. Now we'll go back to our special business. Back to the regular agenda. I like to entertain a motion to go back to the regular agenda.
So moved. Second. She moved and I seconded.
All right,
Moved. He
there's been a
seconded.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion passes. Tonight is a very special night as we prepare to hear from the Repertory Justice Commission. I first want to thank our former president, Sharon McBride, for convening this commission. And at this time, would you like to have a few words to say?
Thank you, President Lee. I'm just excited that this day has come, and I'm very pleased and happy of the commission who was tasked to look at the harms that we have experienced as minorities and Blacks in the city of South Bend, and the history and the historical information that was gathered and the recommendations that is coming forward. I am pleased of the work that I've read thus far. I know that you guys, one of the big asks were for the council to keep hands off and let you guys do the work. So we've allowed you to do that, and know that you all were in very capable hands, very knowledgeable and confident of the findings, that they will be forever in our records. And also, we know that that's still much more work to do. We have come and made some progress, but there's always room for us to continue to grow and see how we can continue to move forward to give everyone equal opportunity and quality of life. And with that, I'll yield back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, the Repertory Justice Commission was impaneled by the South Bend Common Council on September 28th, 2023, to study aspects of repertory justice for the harms and injustices experienced by African Americans and other Black people of African descent as individuals and groups. Those harms were physical, economic, psychological, and emotional, and they're still present today. So they span a generation. For some, represent lost opportunities and potentials that can never be regained. And we recognize it. And at this time, I want to say, can we please give all of the members who served on the Repertory Justice Commission, if you will stand, if we could give you a hand today for your hard work and your efforts today. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the work that you've put in. And so at this time,
Mr. President, one quick thing. Either before or after, can the council take a picture with them all after their presentation like we've done?
yes,
I would
yes.
recommend that.
Yes, we can do that.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, I would like to introduce Trina Robinson, who was the chair of the Repertory Justice Commission. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Trina Robinson, 914 Lincoln Way West, South Bend, Indiana.
Right.
Yeah, speak up.
We're gonna need you to
Okay.
to
I
use
can
your
do that.
outside voice tonight.
All right. Okay, what you see there is a QR code that you can use to be able to access our report. So if you're tech savvy, pull out your cameras and that QR code is there for you.
Oh.
I would also like to say that this is a snippet of our report, and we intend to do the full report on June the 29th at 6:00 p.m. at the library. So we encourage each and every one of you to participate in that. We would like to thank the council for the opportunity to present our final report. I would also like to acknowledge Dr. Darrell Heller, who is unable to be here today due to his father's illness. Additionally, I'd like to recognize two of our contributors to this report, which is Pastor David Buggs and Professor John Duffy, who are here with us today. We are also fortunate to have the assistance of two outstanding researchers, which was Howard Dukes and Kara Herring, whose work contributed significantly in this effort. I'm not going to go over the origin or how it was stated because President Lee did that already. We understand that racial harms uncovered in this report are the results of the actions of a multitude of multiple groups, institutions, and people. While the city of South Bend cannot solely rectify the harms of years of systemic discrimination, we believe the city of South Bend can take these specific steps toward racial reconciliation. We did have immediate implementations, which is the city should formally acknowledge and apologize for a long history of racial discrimination. The city should also preserve this report as a permanent, easily accessible historical public record and commit to creating a robust website where citizens can learn about the history. In our original report, we did indicate that we wanted the council to appoint a permanent repertory justice oversight committee. However, after talking with several individuals, there are members of the committee that will continue to work on to be that part of that oversight committee because we feel that this work is too precious not for it to move forward. This committee should be charged with reviewing progress and implementing the recommendations of the commission, monitoring compliance with repertory justice, and identifying further measures that might come to light to ensure repertory justice. The committee shall report to the Common Council the progress toward implementing the Commission's recommendations and suggest for the adoption of any additional measures needed for this. Based on the findings of this report, the Commission has developed 62 recommendations. The following slides identify key opportunities for consideration by the City of South Bend, followed by a complete overview of the harms and recommendations organized by subcommittee. Meaningful progress will require collaboration among public, private, nonprofit, and community stakeholders. It is our hope that these recommendations served as a framework for continued partnerships and actions to advance equitable outcomes across our community. When we took on this task, we realized that there was a need for subcommittees. And so you will hear tonight a brief history and the historical harms from the 5 subcommittees. And they are economic opportunity and employment, housing, education, health and mental health, policing, criminal, and legal. At this time, I'm going to ask the Economic Opportunities Subcommittee Chair to come forward.
Good evening. I'm James
Evening.
James Lewis, 633 North Coquiller Drive in South Bend. Thank you, Trina, and President Lee, honorable members of the council. I had the privilege of serving as the chair of the Economic Opportunity and Employment Subcommittee. And that included the following members: Regina Williams-Preston, Trina Robinson, Conrad Damian, Aladine DeRose, and also John Duffy as well. So, and our subcommittee looked into four things. Number one, individual employment in South Bend. Number two, small businesses. Number three, professionals. And number four, public accommodations. And along the way, we tried to develop our section of the report, focusing first on the history, and then second on the lingering harms as a result of that history, and then third, the remedies that we suggested as a subcommittee. So as Trina mentioned, tonight we're going to try to give a brief overview of the report. It's the full report. We're not doing another report. It's the full report, but tonight we're going to try to give you a brief overview of that. And I'll try to be concise. I'm a lawyer, so forgive me. I sometimes talk too much. I think you have to start with thinking about the history of South Bend. We're sometimes thought of as a progressive city. We were, as you see on the map, considered an important stop on the Underground Railroad. But South Bend was a pass-through stop on the Underground Railroad. It wasn't a place where folks that were fleeing slavery in the South stopped and settled. We know that in part because there were more than 100,000 African Americans who fled the South through the Underground Railroad. But in 1870, which is 5 years after the end of the Civil War, 5 years after the passage of the 13th Amendment ending slavery, there were only 120 African Americans residing in all of St. Joseph County, most of those outside of the city area. When we look ahead and find out, what happened with our, there we go, population, what happened was that when the First World War came along in 1914, and there was a need for more factory workers in South Bend, we saw the population of African Americans increase. And here on this slide, you see on the left column, you see the numbers. This is not St. Joseph County. These are the city of South Bend numbers. And on the right column, those are African Americans living in South Bend. And so you see the numbers move from 1910 at 604 to 1920 to 1,269. During this time, of course, there was a need for some of the items that were being manufactured in South Bend to be increased for the war support. There was also a decrease in the number of young men, local young men, who were available to serve in the factory because they were getting shipped off to fight. And there was also a decrease in the number of immigrants. And as we all know, the history of South Bend is a lot of the history of immigration, but a lot of those immigrants weren't coming anymore from Europe during those years because of the war. And so, forced to, South Bend's factories started to turn and open the doors to Black employees. And you see the numbers increase there, double really from 1910 to 1920. This was happening throughout the industrial North, but in some places it was happening where the doors were open wider. In that same decade, the population of African Americans in Detroit went from approximately 5,000 in 1910 to approximately 40,000 in 1920, so an eightfold increase. South Bend didn't have quite that type of of open door. And if you look at, for example, the book that was published by Reverend Buford Gordon in 1922, and he talks about where African Americans were welcome, excuse me, and where they weren't welcome. He only mentions 3 factories in South Bend as really hiring Blacks in any significant number, and most of those were at Studebaker. When World War II came along, or the buildup for it in the late 30s, we saw a second wave of immigration to our factories, and you see the numbers there increase as well. But what we know is that even still, when African Americans were welcomed to work in factories in South Bend, they were segregated. They were put into different parts of the factory and kept away from where the whites were working. And usually they were given the most dangerous and lowest paying jobs. In the case of Studebaker, who employed approximately 90% of the blacks who worked in South Bend factories in 1920, most of the African Americans worked in the foundry. And the foundry was the most dangerous place, the hottest place, and the lowest paying jobs in Studebaker. And just as a point of comparison, I have a slide here just to show quickly. If you look at the sales force of Studebaker in 1930, these are the top 100 salespeople, and you'll notice, of course, they're all white. Now, not every company, even still, even with the war pressures, not every company hired black workers. There's a very famous company in South Bend called Bendix Corporation, which started here in 1924, was very successful, but refused to hire any black workers until 1941, when President Roosevelt signed an executive order and said that if any company anywhere in the country wanted to have any defense contracts, they had to eliminate barriers to employment for minorities. And in 1941, Bendix hired its first 6 black workers. By the end of that year, they had a total of 19 African-American employees out of a workforce of 7,000. I'll keep moving on here. We know, of course, there was also a history of racial discrimination in public accommodation. In other words, in places where people could go, not all the people could go. Starting with our natatorium, most people are familiar with that story, opened in 1922, built as the South Bend public pool, built with public money from all the public, but it wasn't open to all the public. Even though it said public on the front, what that meant was the white public. And so African Americans were not allowed to use the pool for the first 14 years it was open. And after there was considerable pressure led by attorney Chester Allen, it opened in 1936, one night a week, one evening a week for African Americans to come and swim. It was that way until 1950, when after more public pressure built up, it was finally opened, at least on the face of it, it was open to anyone. There are plenty of stories that we heard when we did our meetings with local residents about how discrimination at the natatorium continued through the 50s and 60s. Pictures on this slide show some of the other businesses that were notorious for segregation, and those included Cremo Bakery, which did not hire black drivers. The Philadelphia, a famous eatery in South Bend, a candy store and eatery that did not allow black patrons. The Colfax Theater, which had two areas of seating, it was segregated seating, and the Grant Company, which also didn't serve blacks. There's a story here from 1961 of a restaurant called Giuseppe's that was on LaSalle. There was a charge against a waitress filed by an African-American customer who wasn't served. And she admitted, I was told by my boss, we don't serve blacks. This was 1961. So all this goes to show that, as is quoted in Gabrielle Robinson's book, there were folks who came from the South intending to flee Jim Crow, but they met Jim Crow in the North, including here in South Bend. African-American women in particular had a hard time finding work. Nearly all of them worked in domestic area for many, many years. They were hard time getting jobs in factories. Factories weren't hiring black women. There were no jobs in sometimes we think about the jobs that were open to women earlier in our era, and we think about, oh, well, there was always teaching and nursing. And there were those jobs for white women, but not for African-American women. As you know, first of all, there were no African-American teachers at all in South Bend schools before 1950. And the pioneers in nursing, and this is a picture of Bobby Durant, tell the stories about how, and Bobby told the story about how when she went to Memorial Hospital, she was told there by the director of nursing, well, I don't know what it would be like to work in a hospital where we had Black nurses. And so it was many years after that that they started hiring Black nurses. And in factories, they weren't hired. There's a picture here from the Kingsbury Ordnance Plant, which opened in 1941 near LaPorte, where that actually did recruit for women, particularly minority women, because nobody wanted to work there. It was such a dangerous place to work. And Gail Brody, who now has a street named after her, mother Annette was actually working there when there was an explosion, lost part of her hand and was burned. But those were the kinds of factory jobs that were first available to African American women. I want to tell a story. I'll try to keep it brief, but I think it illustrates what it was like at the time. This is 1957. Carrie Hull worked at a well-known furniture and appliance store in South Bend at the time, and she was a cleaning person. All the rest of the staff there was white, but she worked there for a couple of years and got to know people and got along with everyone, including one of the bosses whose name was John. And Ms. Hull came to John and said, I don't ever see Black people shopping here in the store. And, we're open in the evenings. There's 4 nights a week. They were open until 9 p.m. We're open in the evenings. What about if I could work during the day, my full shift, and then at the end of my shift, I would change clothes. And in the evening, I could sell to, some of my friends. And John said, actually, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And she went home that night. She was so excited. So the story goes from her son. She had cards printed up that had her name on it and the name of the store and the address. And she was an usher at St. John's. And she went to church that weekend and passed out her cards. And over the next couple of weeks, at the end of the day, she brought her Sunday clothes. And she would, as her son says, she would call it jump sharp. And she would change clothes from her cleaning outfit into her Sunday outfit. And she would sell. And for 2 or 3 weeks, it went really well. And then John called her into his office and said, Carrie, I'm sorry to say this, but we're going to need to revisit this situation with you, selling. And she said, John, I didn't think you were like that. And he said, like what? She said, prejudice. And he said, oh, Carrie, it's not me. I like you. And I like having your friends come in here, but it's the sales guys. They're not comfortable with this at all, and I can't afford to lose them. And that was the end of that. And as her son, who's Dr. Elijah Anderson, now a professor at Yale University, tells the story, I never saw my mom so deflated as that day when she came home and realized that her dream of being a sales lady was over. 1957, that is. Because African Americans weren't hired in businesses, and because they couldn't frequent those businesses, they're developed on the west side of South Bend, sometimes thought of as near the intersection of Linden and Birdsell, or in that general area, what was called the Black Business District. And in fact, there's a picture here from the directory that was published for many years of those businesses. And that district thrived for a number of years until sort of the 1970s and 1980s, when other opportunities started to arise for African Americans. I want to talk now about the harms, because some people will stop and say, okay, so bad things happened in the 40s, bad things happened in the 50s, so what, right? Well, this is what. There are still harms that linger from those decades of intentional racial discrimination. And one of them is, of course, the wealth gap. The city commissioned a report in 2017 that detailed this. I won't go into those details. There's a couple of pictures here on the slides, but essentially that the net worth of African Americans in South Bend is less than half of the net worth of whites in South Bend. And continuing on, there are fewer Blacks in management or in higher paying jobs This is a table from a study done by a PhD in South Bend. And if you look at a couple, it's hard to see, I know on this slide, but in the middle of this, there's a line that says management of companies and enterprises. And in management of companies and enterprises, at the time this was created, which was 2021, 2022, there were 2,157 employees, of which, if you go over to the column for Black employees, 149 were Black, and the rest, that is to say, 1,920 were white. The average monthly wage for the white employees in that line is $8,732 a month, and for Black employees, $4,690 a month. If you look just a few lines above that, in finance and insurance, there's a total of 3,666 employees. Of those, only 267 are Black, and you can see a similar racial, earnings disparity there as well. There are, I'm going to skip this slide and come back to it. There are fewer, the third lingering harm is that there are fewer Black-owned businesses and fewer Black professionals in South Bend. We see in a city of roughly 25% African-American citizens, we see only about 5, or depending upon how you count it, perhaps 10% of Black-owned businesses. And when you look at the professional ranks, it's even smaller. I include here a picture of the County Bar Association. Our Bar Association has roughly 525 members, of which about 10 are Black, less than 2%. From our research and from what I was able to gather, similarly, 5% roughly for doctors and some of the other professions. The city engaged Colette Holt in 2020 to do what's called now the disparity study, to look at the number of businesses that are in the kinds of industries that would contract with the city for big contracts. The study showed that there were very few today. Those very few Black-owned businesses are poorly financed, and that they received very few contracts from the city. There was, in a period of time, I believe it's 2015 to 2017, when there were approximately $78 million of contracts let, the total of 0 went to Black-owned businesses, which became the basis of more preferential contracting for that kind of contract in the city of South Bend. So given these lingering harms, our subcommittee suggested remedies, including a group of remedies that aim at young people, and including wealth building education, some trade union engagement, and other remedies, trying to get young people to steer themselves toward higher paying jobs. Secondly, to support current Black employees, including on-the-job management and training, trying to get some of the African Americans that are in low or middle management in position to get themselves up towards the C-suite, where the real money is made. Also support for some ban the box kinds of changes in the city's approach, limiting criminal history and credit checks. And finally, continuing some of the things the city's already doing, but to expand and continue them to support Black-owned businesses, including some preferential city contracting outside of the big dollar items, to include everything like meals and paper cups and paper clips. And then also expanding the kind of enforcement that the city does at some level, with forcing people who promise that they're going to create jobs for minorities when they ask the city for TIF dollars or for tax abatement support, to hold those people to their word. Because today, as we know, many of those folks promise jobs for minorities but don't deliver. And finally, to continue the city's work and expand it to create grants and give grants to startups and small businesses, because there are a lot of really bright young African-American citizens in South Bend who want to start small businesses but don't have access to capital. And in part, that relates to something you're going to hear about next, which has to do with redlining and the inability of folks to obtain loans from banks because of where they live. So Next is our Housing Committee led by Judy Fox.
I'm short, so I have to pull that down. So, my name's Judy Fox. I'm 16030 Baywood Lane, Granger, Indiana. I hope I don't talk too quickly so you can wave your hands. I'm from the East Coast, so I talk fast. My committee was Conrad Damon, Aladine DeRose, Regina Williams Preston. You're going to get the Cliff Notes version of housing discrimination in South Bend. So I hope you took the time to read our report. But I wanted to start by saying that, as Jay mentioned, when the city of South Bend was created in 1823, it was a very unfriendly place for Blacks. You had very few civil rights, and in fact, it wasn't even legal to live here unless you could prove you were free. And for a period of time in Indiana, it was totally illegal for Blacks to move into the state. So it wasn't a great place to be. But as he said, the war industries came about and we started to hire people. And the problem was we hired all these people, but there was nowhere for them to live because the city, people in the city. And by the way, when I'm talking about a lot of these things, there's a lot of reference to what the federal government did, but I think it needs to be clear that the federal government did make certain rules, but the city readily complied and did the certain things. So these are pictures from Maggie's Court in 1916. That was one of the few places that African Americans were allowed to live. These were homes, and I used these were pictures that the South Bend Tribune had. I used the term homes lightly. They basically turned warehouses into living quarters and little shacks, sometimes actually made out of cardboard. And this is where people lived, right? There was no plumbing, no garbage collection, no sanitary facilities. They were truly horrible places to live. So essentially the three places that African Americans could live was Maggie's Court, which is the area where the Rabbi Schulman apartments used to be, Beck's Lake, which you'll hear a lot about today, I think, and a little area near AME Church. Those were the only three places people could live. Now, part of this was because the president at the time, and I just flipped my things, but I hope that's going to work. Yes, President Wilson had very explicitly racist policies, and he created the Own Your Own Home program. And the Own Your Own Home program was specifically designed to get white citizens to own their own homes and move away from Blacks. And he said that out loud. They advertised it out loud. That's what they were about. And the idea was we wanted to build new housing, good housing, but for whites only. And so what happened is by creating that campaign, he encouraged communities, including this community, developers, city officials, real estate folks to abide by that and create policies and programs to enforce it. So some of the things that they recommended that the city went readily along with was zoning regulations. So zoning regulations that kept Blacks away from areas where whites lived, that kind of thing. Covenants, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in area that these are things that are in a deed that talk about who can buy the property and who can't. And this was all done, and this is one of the few times I'll actually read from my slide. The government's position, this is from a government document, was to prevent the infiltration of inharmonious racial groups, which is essentially Blacks. And at that time, it was also Jews and Eastern Europeans as well. So this is what cities were encouraged to do, and this is what South Bend did. So my committee was able to look, we searched for, oh, I hate when that happens. There's a little letter out of place, but whatever. My committee searched the land records from 1922 to 1953. We stopped in 1953. We've been told that there are more covenants beyond 1953, and I'll tell you why we stopped then, but we just ran out of time. We found 68 plats that contained, so a plat is a whole development, so not one house, but 68 plats that had racial covenants in them. So these are things in the deed that say, and I'm reading from one, no person other than a Caucasian race shall be permitted to occupy any portion of the plot, blah, 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 except a third domestic servant. They also included restrictions against commercial property, right? So you could also not open a business and occupy it if you were a Black owner. Now, these 1948, the US Supreme Court said that these were unenforceable, but they did not say they were illegal. They were just unenforceable. In other words, you couldn't sue me because I sold my house to a Black person. Well, first of all, people didn't know that, and people didn't care. Councilmember Davis just contacted me a few days ago to tell me a story that he just got from a constituent who in the 1960s parents were trying to buy a home and they were told, oh, we can't sell that to you because of covenants. So it really restricted what people could buy well after 1948. And in fact, we found 12 plats with racial covenants that were enacted in the city after 1948. And every one of the racial covenants, by the way, the deeds, they're all signed by the Board of Public Works and city officials. So they were all sort of blessed by them. And those deeds are, by the way, they became illegal with the Fair Housing Act in the 60s, but they're still out there. And people who came to our forums and talked about things, they are still being, I would say, privately enforced in a sense. People are still being discouraged from living in certain places because of these things. This is a famous story, so I won't tell a lot of it, but the federal government, it's a famous story, but people don't get it all right. Let me put it that way. During the Depression, the federal government created the Homeowners Loan Corporation, right? And this was a corporation that was going to try to rescue people from foreclosure. There were a lot of foreclosures. So the idea was that they would buy up these loans and help people refinance them to prevent foreclosure. And they created maps and they pulled in local people to help write these maps. And some of the most segregationists in our community were part of writing these maps. And so if you lived in an area that was red or yellow, the government would say, hey, we're not gonna insure any loans in those areas because there's blacks in those areas. And it was that blatant, that's how they put it. They called it infiltration. So there was infiltration, which meant we had undesirable people, non-native born whites. And I love the fact that they use not native born whites as if any of us were native born white, unless you're Native American, but none of us really are native born whites. But anyhow, what people don't know is that that HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, also had maps. And those were the maps that determined who would get first loans, right? So this was the maps when people were buying a new home. Will we insure these or will we not? HUD, when the litigation on all this started in the 60s, HUD ran around the country and destroyed their maps. So we don't have a lot of them, but several cities had them anyway, had kept them. And by comparing those maps to the homeowners maps, we know that the HUD maps were even more discriminatory. And they were the ones that determined whether you got a first loan or not. So the next wonderful act of the federal government was in 1937, and they created the Federal Housing Act. And this was supposed to, well, not supposed to, it gave local municipalities the authority to create a housing authority. And the idea was to create public housing, affordable housing. Now, the city of South Bend really bucked against this because they equated affordable housing with housing for blacks, and there was a lot of pushback on doing this. In 1936, there was a report that showed the severe housing shortage in South Bend, largely related, to war workers. But the city, I should say the Common Council, despite pressure from the mayor, refused to create a housing authority, refused to create any housing. In 1941, the Common Council did finally relent, and they did create the housing authority, but it was restricted exclusively to defense workers, right? So this wasn't just housing for everybody. You had to be a defense worker to qualify. So the first two projects that they built one was 250 units for white war workers, they called them war workers, and 150 units for black workers. Now, the federal government had encouraged cities when they built these, they didn't require, but they encouraged them when they built these to build them on vacant land. So the white housing development was built on vacant land over in the River Park. But the city couldn't find any vacant land for the black housing development that didn't neighbor white neighborhoods, right? So they didn't want to put these in neighborhoods where they would have white neighbors. So the wonderful plan that the city came up with was to destroy 46 family homes on Birdsell and tear down the St. John Baptist Church to create the housing authority, right? Now, there was a lot of pushback because these people own their homes. And this is, by the way, Attorney Allen here, who was arguing against this. So there was pushback, and there were other alternative sites proposed, but the compromise ended up being, and the other thing that was proposed too is to allow some black workers to live in the units that are already built on River Park, which was always turned down. So what ended up happening is the families, is they built these in Becks Lake and Maggie's Court, the two places that I'd already mentioned before. And at least the history we've got, they built them with shoddier construction, shoddier materials. They weren't the same houses that they built for whites. Moving quickly to the 1950s, there was a continual effort by city officials, real estate professionals, builders to oppose any kind of housing for Blacks. There are two sort of happy stories here. William Morris was able to create the Chauffeland Heights off of Twickenham development that was for Blacks. And we all, I think, know the story of Better Homes, which was able to create those homes. But they both kind of did it, honestly, by being secretive and not letting people know that they were going to be bringing Black families into those areas. One of the things that drove a lot of this is the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Real Estate Board, right? And again, these are quotes. So the idea was that if you were going to be a real estate agent, you had to adhere to their code of ethics, was that you couldn't introduce any members of any race that you didn't want, which was essentially Blacks. But honestly, and again, I don't like to read things, but this is so offensive, I have to. And the reason was, like termites, they undermine the structure of any neighborhood in which they creep. So this was in the code of ethics until the 1960s. South Bend and Mishawaka real estate boards had the same code of ethics. We heard from a lot of people who came to our forums. And what we heard is that this is still going on. We had people come who had moved into the area, new in very recent years, who were told that they were being steered. If they were white, they were being steered into white neighborhoods. And if they were Black, they were being steered into Black neighborhoods. So this sort of ethic, this undercurrent, is still out there in our community as early as a few years ago. Heading backwards again, in the 1960s. So again, the Common Council really can continue to refuse to approve public housing in white neighborhoods. They did end up building Rabbi Shulman and Alonzo Washington. For people to know the history, Rabbi Shulman has had to be torn down because it was not maintained and it was condemned. And I might be wrong, but I thought Alonzo Watson was also condemned and slated, or I know it's in very bad shape because I've seen the HUD reports. So the fact is that the houses that were built, or the housing that was built, was not properly maintained in those neighborhoods. And then we get to the next stage of development. So the city got a federal urban renewal grant, and they were giving these grants across the country for people to, basically, they called it slum clearance. So essentially move people out of slums into other neighborhoods. But what it really turned into was the destruction of Black homes and Black businesses. Jay talked about the area around Birdsell and Linden. A lot of that was redeveloped and people relocated. This is a little chart that shows how many families were relocated for some of the projects. They stopped giving numbers after a few years, so this was the only ones we could get actual numbers for. But as you can see, the folks that were relocated were disproportionately Black. One woman gave her oral history talks about being moved 3 times. She started out owning her home, and she finally ended up renting in Becks Lake for a house that she said, was falling apart, basically. And this is what was happening repeatedly to Black families. That, you get the money, you buy a home, and suddenly, well, we're redeveloping, and you're tearing it down, and you're moving me somewhere else. There's 2 studies. Unfortunately, the South Bend Human Rights Commission didn't keep a lot of their old records, so we weren't actually able to get copies of these studies. But there was a study done in 1980, and another one done, I'll just show that one, in 1988. So both of these, we got reports from the newspapers, but I wasn't able to see the actual studies. But both studies showed, so what they do in these studies is they send out testers, right, to try to rent apartments. And in both of these studies, they showed continued discrimination. And again, we had person after person after person come and talk about how they had been turned down from rentals, had been told there was nothing available, only to have a white person come and say there was something available, or being told it was available, and as soon as they showed up and they saw they were Black, saying, oh, we made a mistake, sorry, this, we rented it. But then they would see the sign still up after they left. So in the late 1990s and early 2000, what happened was what we call reverse redlining, which is the banks then came into these areas and said, oh yeah, you said we didn't give you any loans. We're going to give you loans now. But what they gave were very bad, very predatory loans. Study after study after study has shown that, even if you had the same credit score, even if you had the same income, you got a worse loan if you were Black. And these groups were going door to door in Black neighborhoods in South Bend. Rich Williams and I did this study for the city showing where the foreclosures happened as a result of this. And I will say, and I know now that this is not even completely accurate, because we didn't realize at the time that the banks were doing something that no one ever heard of before, which is that they were foreclosing but not foreclosing. They were telling people they were foreclosed, but they weren't taking ownership of the properties, and so they were just walking away. It was called bank walkaways. And according to the Housing and Urban Development Study, South Bend had some of the worst. We would have been in like the top 10 of bank walkaways, equaling out for our size and things. So this one's personal to me, because I personally came to the city and said, you've got a problem here. And I was told, no, we don't. These are good banks, Bank of America, Citibank. We don't have to worry. Well, we know what turned out with Bank of America and Citibank. So the city did their report that they do periodically on the impediments of fair housing choice in South Bend and St. Joe County. And so these are city findings. They found that race was still the most common basis for complaints with the Human Rights Commission. They found lending discrimination still exists in South Bend. And again, I would say that the number of people that came to our forums and talked about this happening to them supports that. Zoning ordinances that were meant to prevent, that were directed at student rentals ended up disproportionately affecting African-American housing. And since 2010, racial segregation in our city has actually increased, not decreased. So, where do we go from here? And what were the harms? We know there are a lot fewer Black homeowners. They're the gray line here as compared to the other two lines. We know that areas of the city, and I welcome anyone to take a ride if they don't believe me, have not seen the investment in their streets, in their sidewalks, and that other areas of the city had. And this was a common complaint that people brought up in our reports. We know that you are still more likely to be evicted and foreclosed on if you're Black. So there are still lingering harms. We're going to do education next, but my group didn't list out our recommendations. They're all in our report. It's just some of the things the city's already doing, right? You're reviewing your zoning, which is a good thing. You've got programs for home ownership that maybe people don't know enough about. And I think there can be some really easy things done to help invest in the neighborhoods that have been uninvested in or disinvested in, whatever. And so, we look forward to a time when we can talk more specifically about some of those. Today, we just wanted to sort of give you an overview of the report and the history. And now I'm going to turn over to my lovely Chair of Education.
Good evening. First of all, I want to start out by introducing the members of the wonderful Education Subcommittee. We had started out with two chairs. We had co-chairs. It was Regina Williams-Preston, there she is, and Alma Powell speaking. Oh, by the way, my address is 52095 Carriage Hills Drive, South Bend, Indiana. And then we ended up with Aladine DeRose, who's on the committee, who ended up being a co-chair. And we have Conrad Damien on the committee, who ended up being a co-chair. And so I say all of that because we all had equal parts in pulling our project and our report together. One of the things that, I also want to allude to Wilner Cusick, who many of you know that we lost during a couple years ago. She was originally a member of the subcommittee and certainly had a great impact on our especially on special ed data. And then also, Trina has already mentioned Howard Dukes, but Howard Dukes was really a great asset to our community also. But when you look at history of the United States and of course of South Bend, as my colleagues have already alluded to, that there were 5 things that happened to African Americans that never happened to any other race of people anywhere. And one of the things that has the most longevity is what has happened to our young people, and that's education. The inequalities in education has been most consequential for Black students, and therefore we know the cyclical process of that. Many African American students have succeeded in South Bend. However, data clearly shows that a lot have had unsuccessful tenures in the corporation. We're not here to accuse the South Bend Community School Corporation, nor to exonerate the South Bend Community School Corporation. All we did in our committee was looked at facts, and our facts will be in our report, and you will see them in detail in the long report. To understand where we are today, my colleagues have already alluded to it a bit, but South Bend school enrollment in 1921 had the South Bend schools had 1.3% African American students. And in 60 years, it had grown to 9%. And as early as 1921, those Black students were already reporting about inequities and things that were happening to them. As early as 1921, an anonymous writer wrote and expressed concerns in the South Bend Tribune about the prejudice and feelings of inferiority experienced by Black children in local schools. This occurred, of course, during a period that we've already heard about in terms of economics and housing. But as the Great Migration happened and families moved up to South Bend, and my family was one of them, things changed for the South Bend Community School Corporation. And we were looking to see, did the South Bend Community School Corporation change as a result of that? I'll give you one example, Linden School. Many of you here are familiar with what happened with Linden School that was over on Linden Avenue, and the ceiling was falling in. And one of the things that happened and that we heard a lot about in our forums, we had a lady that come and really expressed to us and showed us what we were going to hear in forums, because we thought, well, we're going to hear stories about numbers and problems and that type of thing. But she actually sat down at the table. We were at the Charles Martin Center. And she said the thing that bothered her mother more than anything else, and that still rides with her, is the fact that the Black people had asked them to fix that raggedy school. That's exactly the way she said it. And the superintendent did nothing. And then what happened one day when she was in school, the ceiling fell in. And she said, her mother said, the only thing I wanted to happen was for somebody to apologize for having my child in that school building. And we thought, wow, we're here looking for other types of data. And here's a woman that's coming in with tears in her eyes saying, the only thing we want is someone to apologize to us. And so that sort of made us look at things differently. The testimony changed our perspective. We realized that acknowledging and repairing harms, it goes together. We have to acknowledge them before we can repair them. And we hope that our report does a lot of acknowledging the harms. When Black parents sought relief from inequitable conditions, one superintendent said, mixing children reduces achievement for all of them. If we mix them up, it reduces achievement for all of them. Most of you are familiar with the consent decree. At that time, Black students were approximately 25% of the enrollment in South Bend schools. Yet several schools had more than 50% African American students, and many schools, almost 85%, had enrollment that was 85% white and above. The consent decree sought to erase racially identifiable schools and ensure equal educational opportunity and extracurricular opportunities for all students. So release or get rid of some of the, I don't want to say prejudice, but some of the things that were going on, the inequities is the word, to get rid of some of the inequities and then also provide more educational opportunities for students. And then after the consent decree came the 2002 Plan Z, and that brought a lot of ire in the community. In fact, we have Olitha Jones here and the NAACP, and very large group called the LaSalle Group, I think, had concerns about the Plan Z. And what Plan Z ended up doing, it was approved. But what happened with it is they named magnet schools And then what happened in the schools is they resegregated within the roof. So you had kids going to the same school, but the classrooms were resegregated. Throughout our work, we heard a lot of painful stories. It was hard for us at sometimes because we're educators and support people for the South Bend Community School Corporation. One former student shared that teachers weren't nice and the students weren't nice. That was sort of hard to hear from a person. Many recalled, oh, this was a one that we heard so frequently. The kids would get excited because they were told they were going to get new books. And so when the new books came, they came from a predominantly white school. And kids' names were already in the books and kids' writings. And those were the new books that they received. And we heard that from, I think it was 3 of our guests. There are 2 former African-American administrators that described how counselors told them and told their parents that they should pursue something other than a college education. I happen to be one of those students that heard that. A parent shared in one of our meetings that her energetic son was recommended for special ed because they just didn't know how to calm him down. He was moving and talking and going on in class. And so she was angry, decided not to have him put in special ed. She put him in a Catholic school. She wanted us to know that he now has a master's degree. A representative from 100 Black Men program emphasized how important it is for educators to understand the learning culture and experiences of Black boys and the positive outcomes that can occur when students receive meaningful support from teachers and administrators. So we listened to those stories, we looked at a lot of data, and we started saying, okay, what are the harms that are here? And Regina Regina was showing the form. I forgot I was supposed to say what Regina was showing. I started talking. Just listen to me and look at what Regina puts up there and we'll be okay. But beyond personal stories, we examined local data and compared it with national research on discipline, retention, preschool access, graduation rates, academic placement, and other educational outcomes. But what we found out was interesting, that South Bend's patterns of inequity and disproportionality in all of those groups, we're struggling with the same types of racial issues that other districts are suffering with. The realities documented by other commission reports, housing disparities, health disparities, wealth gap, unequal treatment in policing, also affect educational outcomes. A disproportionate number of Black children grow up in poverty, which often means reduced access to quality preschool programs, fewer early literacy opportunities, and fewer academic resources. These disadvantages can contribute to increased referrals to special ed and lower graduation rates for African American students, reduced enrollment in advanced coursework, and ultimately fewer economic opportunities as adults. It was interesting. We hear so much about African American children being placed in special ed, and it's an issue. It's an issue in South Bend schools. It's an issue in the United States. But one thing that's oftentimes overlooked is the inequity of African American students being placed in advanced placement courses, in honors courses, in college prep courses. And so we looked at that and saw, wow, there's really almost an equal disproportionality there. For the 2024-25 school year, looking at Regina now, Black students accounted for approximately 64.9% of out-of-school suspensions and 65% of expulsions. So you're looking at a group that represents 36% of the total enrollment, but yet when you look at special ed, or you look at suspensions, they're representing almost 65% of those. Academic placement data also reveals disparities. In 2000, Black students represented 36% of district enrollment, yet they accounted for 47% of special education placement. 47%, almost half of the kids in special ed classrooms in South Bend community schools were Black. And only 16% of them were identified for gifted and talented programs. Wow. Something to look at. Recommendations. Our committee recommends that we focus on certain key areas. Oh, before I do that, Regina, is there anything you want to add that I skipped over on the slide? Pardon? Okay. Okay. You can tell we had fun on our committee. We worked hard, but we had fun because Alma was all over the place and Regina was so exact.
Oh, look, I went way back. Hi, my name is Regina Williams Preston. I live at 1725 North Olive Street. I went way back too far. Here we go. So we just wanted to share, we went through, the funny story is that old data. They were like, yeah, we have the data. It's in boxes in the basement of Lincoln School. So guess what? We went to Lincoln School and looked through the boxes. And we got lots and lots of data on special education, on program integration. So meaning like the gifted and talented and all the different options. And what we saw is over time, they actually tracked it because of the consent decree. We have a lot of data on what was going on since 1980. And we saw these specific trends in all those places. In discipline, most specifically, this is one that we wanted to note. In 2018-2019 school year, the number of out-of-school suspensions for Black students exceeded the numbers for white students to the tune of there was about exactly the same proportion of Black students and white students. There were almost 2,000 for white students, but almost 9,000 out of school suspensions. And it's just out of school suspensions, not in school, not anything. But when we kind of put this together, as you know, I was teaching in South Bend schools for 25 years, and we were looking at the data as a teacher. We said, wait a minute, every day of missed school is a day of what? Missed instruction. So we decided to do the numbers, and the numbers are there. You could check it out. In this particular year, Black students missed 3 million minutes of instruction. Now, that only means something when you know that there are only 59,000 minutes of instruction in an entire school year. So 3 million minutes is equivalent to 50 years of missed instruction for Black students in just 1 year. So that equates to 200 students missing an entire grading period, and that's just for out-of-school suspension. So imagine if we could reduce the days of out-of-school suspension, how many more Black students would be passing standardized tests? How many more Black students would have access to special education, special programs in the academies and the magnet schools? And so that leads us to our recommendation.
And before we do that, Aladeen or Conrad, anything you want to add? Feel free. Okay, our recommendations. We wanted, number one, the district to start addressing discipline disparities. And I think they've already admitted to that because there was a board meeting not too long ago where they did say that they were going to start looking at some of their suspension data. Secondly, we wanted them to reduce disproportionate academic placement and classification. That means more kids in gifted and talented programs, fewer kids in special education programs. We contacted the local universities and the primary universities in this area that provided teachers for South Bend schools about their curricula. So we looked at the curricula from St. Mary's, Bethel, Goshen. I think there was one other. Thank you, my school, IUSB. And what we realized that there was very little instruction given. In fact, in no cases was there any instruction given on cultural awareness and understanding the varied learning styles of kids and teaching to all learning styles. So we wanted the corporation to increase teacher awareness and understanding of the experiences of Black children and Black families. And then the last one, expanding programming, including preschool access, after-school opportunities, GED support, mentoring initiatives, and other community-based interventions. So in closing, this report, of course, represents, as all reports do, represents many hours of reviewing data, studying research, examining historical records, and most importantly, the most important thing we did was listen to community members. That was really, really very telling for us. Even if sometimes it seems like the stories weren't true, but the fact that they felt they were was important. You get it? Mm-hmm. So we say it couldn't be, but they felt it in their hearts. And by addressing these long-standing challenges, we can help ensure that South Bend becomes an even better place for our children to learn, to grow, and to succeed. So please take time and look at our education report and come on the 29th to get specificity in terms of some of the data that we looked at. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Cassie White. I live at 3633 Springbrook Drive, South Bend. It's an honor to be with you this evening. I want to take time to acknowledge the other subcommittee members of the Health and Mental Health Subcommittee, Pastor Wilbert Washington, Judy Fox, and Pastor David Buggs, who couldn't be here tonight, and Daryl Heller. Yay! Thanks for being here, Pastor Bucks. Wonderful. Our work focused on understanding racism and discrimination, both historically and in our local systems, and how they've shaped health outcomes for the health and Black and African American residents in South Bend. Some of the historical examples that I'm going to provide will not share how they occurred specifically in South Bend. However, they're critical to understanding the broader context of harm and the well-founded mistrust that exists between Black communities and the healthcare and mental health systems. That mistrust did not emerge overnight, and it has been built over generations through policies, practices, and lived experiences. As we go throughout providing some of the harms in the data, as a commission, we find it really important to hold this space for acknowledgement that the different numbers and graphs that we show represent a person and represent a story. And those are stories and individuals of our community. And so as we go throughout, I just hope that it carries that weight as you look at the information that we provide. So to start, this is a nationally recognized medical maltreatment that occurred in 1932 as a public health service. The Tuskegee Institution began a study of the natural history of syphilis. This is a study that initially involved 600 Black men, 399 with syphilis, 201 without the disease, and was conducted without informed consent. The men were told that they were being treated for bad blood. This is an example of how the mistrust began and continued between residents and the healthcare system. Some of the other historical documents that we looked at was a Board of Health report for our community here in St. Joseph County from 1941. And that report showed that 10 times more tuberculosis deaths in 1940 occurred in the Black and African American population. That was 10 times than other population groups. And the average age of death at that time was 30 for Black and African American individuals. Some of the oral histories that we pulled, one specifically that I wanted to highlight tonight was from Dr. Chambly. He is a well-known, prominent South Bend physician and civic rights leader who came to South Bend in 1953 as an intern and spent decades advocating for equality and integrated healthcare. In his oral history, he describes how both the local hospitals, Memorial and St. Joseph, were segregated when he arrived, and how opportunities for Black physicians were limited by referral patterns and relationships within the medical system. His experiences reflected both the barriers within healthcare systems and the work of local leaders here in South Bend to challenge them and push for change. Discrimination extended beyond hospital walls. Other oral histories that we included in this section describes a realtor trying to find a site for a Black dentist. These barriers meant Black professionals were denied the ability to establish practices in certain neighborhoods, directly limiting access to care in Black communities. These images come from a nursing book in 2014. I'm going to say that year again, 2014. That's just a little bit over a decade ago. And just recently was taken out of the nursing schools that holds weight. This page directly looks at the differences, cultural differences, in how different races, ethnicities, and religions experience pain. This reminds us of the biased ideas that were being taught in modern training materials, but still include the harmful assumptions about cultural differences and responses to pain that still exist today. It has now been criticized and banned, but that wasn't that long ago, and holding the weight to how that affects our community and residents now. This slide we wanted to include of looking at causes of death. The main highlight, the green, represents the top 5 causes of death from 1979 and 1980, and the bottom blue represents the top deaths that occurred in 2021 and 2022 for the Black and African Americans. This is the rate of death, and where I want to call out is seeing that heart disease and lung cancer both remain high as rates decades later. And what this shows us is that while medicine has advanced, the underlying conditions driving these outcomes, access to care, environmental exposures, chronic stress, and inequities in prevention, have been addressed, but not at the same pace. Beyond mortality is looking at years of potential life loss, and this helps us understand premature death. This slide presents the measure emphasizing the deaths of younger persons. The top line represents the years of potential life loss for the Black individuals and residents of St. Joseph County, showing that it is 10 times that of the other races and ethnicities, meaning that those that are dying away prematurely are also dying of preventative conditions. We looked at, which is wonderful of why I get to follow all of the other subcommittees, is looking at social drivers of health. And what that means are the conditions in which people live, work, play, and worship, and how that impacts health outcomes. Research shows us that 80% of our health is found outside of our clinical walls. And even further, 50% of our health can actually be tied back to the zip code in which we live. And so these are those social drivers of health, and how you can't look at one thing, but how all of these subcommittees and the report altogether has to be looked at together by addressing the other subcommittee recommendations that will improve health outcomes for the Black and African American residents of South Bend. This shows similarly just how they cut across by addressing policies, racism, and discrimination. You can see the impact across economic stability, neighborhood and built environment, education, food, community and social context, and healthcare. Some other specific, and this is an image that we like to use to show how health outcomes correlate to root causes. A way of when addressing root causes and investing in the communities and neighborhoods, we see improved health outcomes. One of the examples that we wanted to show around health outcomes is maternal health and infant mortality specifically. Infant mortality is one of the clearest indicators of community health and equity. And this slide begins to show us those profound disparities remain. This is from the St. Joseph County Fetal Infant Mortality Review to show from 2010 to current state, the Black infant mortality ranges over the years, but around 3 times that of other races and ethnicities across the community. Further research was done by the FEMUR program, comparing across different races and ethnicities to understand how those deaths could be prevented for the Black infant mortality. And 59% of the Black infant deaths from 2018 to 2022 were preventable. That holds weight. 59% of the babies that died during that age range could have been prevented. We tied different social drivers of health that are affiliated with infant and maternal health, looking at economic stability and systems of power being 2 of those examples. A lot of this research was also done through the St. Joseph County Health Equity Report, where it dives a lot deeper, and that research was utilized in the Reparatory Justice Report as well, showing how the different social drivers impact those health outcomes a little bit deeper, but wanting just to provide a high level for you all today. For heart disease, wanted to provide this also as an example. This shows heart disease death rates in St. Joseph County for adults age 35 and older by population group and gender. It notes that the countywide average rate of death due to heart disease for all age groups was 174.5 deaths per 100,000. But you can see the disparities reflect more than medical treatment alone. They reflect the differences in prevention, access to care, neighborhood conditions, food access, stress, and long-term exposure to inequitable systems. The social drivers that we see tied here are to economic stability, food systems, as well as education. This slide here, the redlining map that Judy already spoke to, is a comparison to show of the specific neighborhoods, so the ones that are in red or the ones that were impacted in the 1960s, and the middle map represents the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. And what this shows is the darker the blue, the more vulnerable it is for community members to live and exist. And then the far right represents the risk of lead exposure for children living in those neighborhoods. And you can see a comparison within those neighborhoods of the impacts from the 1960s to current state, that the same neighborhoods are most greatly affected. This was also research that we included around LaSalle Park and Becks Lake neighborhood, looking at the EPA report specifically from 1985 to 2015, being within that environmental research that we did. And we'll dive deeper into that on the 29th. Some of the social drivers around lead poisoning and environmental exposures is neighborhood and built environment and economic stability. The other aspect of our subcommittee was focusing on mental health. While this slide notes from 2015 to 2019, Black residents were 42% more likely to die from mental, behavioral, and neurodevelopmental disorders than white residents. This was in conversation. Our subcommittee also engaged with several residents throughout the community. We invited Derek Perry to come to our subcommittee and speak to his experiences working at Oaklawn and working with the youth across the community. And he shared about 21% of Black people experience mental health concerns, but fewer than 4 in 10 of those individuals seek mental health services. Black individuals are less likely to receive counseling or treatment and are more likely to be arrested when they experience a mental health breakdown. These stressors that Black individuals face make their symptoms more acute. This is tied also to the research that we did and had some interns that supported this around the neuroscience and the epigenetics of how these adverse experiences that occur in childhood and later in life affect the brain development as well as the chronic stress and how your body responds to those stressors, which gets into this slide here of how adverse childhood experiences, including things like neglect, instability, or witnessing violence are, and many are caused or made worse by systemic issues. The chronic stress affects brain development. So this was a lot of that research that the interns dove into for us to call out specifically the aspects of the brain that are impacted by discrimination in our community. We wanted to highlight some of the suggested remedies, while they're not all of them. A lot of these came from the community members that we also interviewed and heard from throughout the the last 3 years. One of being increasing the number of community health workers and peer support specialists to hire and train these positions with individuals from the communities to assist residents in accessing the resources and care that they need. Having an annual public report on health disparities and progress on the repertory initiatives, ensuring access to healthy and affordable foods, especially on the west side, as we, through that research, even seeing Kroger being one of the primary affordable grocery stores being closed down on the west side, reducing the access to healthy foods. Continuing to see the impacts of that in the specific neighborhoods most affected, seeing the enhancement of the city lead removal program, supporting the homes in the zip codes with the highest risk of lead exposure, the zip codes listed there, and supporting the efforts in the community to increase the number of peer counselors and mental health providers and healthcare providers that represent and look like the individuals of the city. And dive a little bit deeper into some of the other remedies that we have also around Becks Lake on June 29th. And now I will pass it over to Trina.
I am, excuse me, the chair of the policing subcommittee. And on on that committee was Pastor Gilbert Washington and Richard Warfield and Professor Darrell Heller. The policing and criminal legal justice identifies several areas warranting further examination, including disparities and arrest involving Black residents, use of force practices, allegations of civil rights violation, pretrial incarceration related to bail affordability, community perceptions of law enforcement, the courts. And however, the committee determined that additional research and analysis are needed to produce a comprehensive and factually grounded report. We will be adding that later, but we do know from speaking with some of the members of the community that there is a concern and there is a mistrust with the police here in South Bend, Indiana. We also know that speaking with some police officers that was once police officers in the city of South Bend, how they were not elevated and promoted. However, they had just as much experience. And that was kind of heartbreaking because we spoke with one individual that now works in the Elkhart Police Department, where he had gone to it was in the military, had served in the war, had done a lot of work as far as combat, and then he wanted to be on the SWAT team. He was denied that opportunity. We do know that there were some officers that had filed lawsuits against the city of South Bend, as well as residents that had filed lawsuits, and one had probably, I think, maybe $16 or something. Individuals that were tased unjustly, people that were arrested and profiled. And so those are some of the things that we're going to begin to look at. We're also going to begin to look at how the promotion are with the African Americans, as well as the hiring and the firing practices that exist. So at this time, we're open to questions, and I'm going to ask all of the subcommittee chairs to come forth. So if there's any questions that I can answer that they can assist me with. You have been summoned.
Once again, let's give the commission a hand for all of the hard work, the hours, the preparation, and the information. Council members, because our time is growing far spent, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to ask 2 questions if you want. If you only want to ask 1, you can. And then everybody, please, let's keep it to about 5 minutes if so.
I have a question. I would like to make a couple of
Yes.
statements. So you let me know when you get through the questions, come
Okay.
back, because I would like to make a statement.
Okay. Just questions right now.
Mhm.
I tell you what, if you want to make your comments,
Go ahead, you know.
okay. Any questions? Yes.
I do.
Okay, sorry.
Wait, who are you pointing to?
We were starting here. Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
Yes, I'll save my comments for later since we have another section for that, but I do want to say thank you. This is incredible work. I have a lot of questions floating in my mind, and so, but it would be helpful to hear just a little bit about the process of compiling this report. And so what that looked like, I know there are 5 subcommittees, and now including the policing subcommittee that's going to be, where more content is going to be added. But, you know, did each subcommittee write a final report, and then there was a final author that pulled that together, was a final author? So could you just share a little bit about what that process was?
Okay, so our process began first with community forums. We
Mhm.
got the input from, and we were throughout the city. We were at the Northwest Neighborhood Association, MLK Center, Downtown Library. So we tried to touch all areas of the city. The subcommittees each had a researcher that worked with them, and we pulled together information that we felt, first of all, let me back up. The information that was received from the community, their testimonies, we took that into consideration to add because we felt that it was important that you hear from people that have experienced some of the things that we're talking about. And from that, we decided that we would have a consolidated report. We will all put it together. We would first identify the historical aspect of it. We will then identify the harms. Each subcommittee would identify the harms, and then we would identify how would we rectify the harms. And so knowing that all of the subcommittees had those tasks, we pulled it all together and condensed it into the report that you now see.
I think one of the things we can add too, early on, in order to not reinvent the wheel, we all were assigned different reparation commissions that were across the United States. And so what we did is look to see how they operated and what were the categories. And during that study, that's when we came up with the 5 areas of focus for us.
The one other thing we wanted to add is we did also invite experts in each of the fields to come and speak to the committees. And then we also had the help of some research help from some students, local students in the area that did some nice research for us. And, you know, for instance, in my committee, they're the ones that sat at the county city building looking through all of the deeds for weeks and weeks, you know.
And additionally, we did reach out to stakeholders, individuals that we felt that would be that we would have to sell this to. So before we pulled this together, we talked with stakeholders for the various subcommittees that we had.
It's extensive, and I think it's important to lift that up. So I appreciate you saying that. Just as someone who has also worked on collaborative documents like this and the difficulty of pulling together research and committees, it just it's important to note how how extensive that is, what kind of the difficulty of that work. So is it fair to say that each of the chairs of the subcommittees are co-authors on this report, or which one of you was the one that pulled it all together?
No, we all pulled it all together. There was no I in it.
Okay.
It was a we.
Yeah.
And so everybody had
co-authors
we all had to sign off on it. So the subcommittee chairs were not the only person. All of the members of the commission had input in it, and it was a yay or nay. And we didn't leave the room until we all was on yay.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, when. 2 years, okay. And then my second question is, did you have a time frame on the recommendations on the policing subcommittee?
If you attend the meeting on June 29th,
Okay.
there are 62 recommendations, and we broke them down into immediate, 3 month, 6 months, a year, and then beyond. We do understand that some of these subcommittees, such as the education, does not come directly from the city, and we will set up a meeting with the superintendent to discuss the recommendations in that aspect. Some of the recommendations in the health, mental health, will have to come from the health department, and we realize that we would have to sit down with them as well. But we do have those recommendations broken down into a time frame. We felt that that was important to be able to measure whether or not progress is being made, because oftentimes progress is not being made. Things are often set on the desk, and we never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's really clear here, but on the policing subcommittee, the timeline on that, I mean, will that be in the next couple months?
Well, I
section
can't really
will
say
come,
because
or-
Dr. Dale Heller
Oh,
was the
okay.
chair of that.
Got it.
And
Thank
so
you.
we're not going to rush it because it's very important to this community and to the citizens of this community. So if it takes us 2 months, 3 months, however many months, it took us longer than the 18 months that we were entitled to get this completed. And so we are not here to rush that policing because it's very important to the citizens of this community and to the commission as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So to be continued.
That's right.
All right, we'll get to you, Dr. Biting, and we're going to go to Councilwoman Sherry Bolden Simpson.
A simple question. I kind of would like to hear a short answer from both of you. First of all, just thank you. I'm still reading the report because it reads like a novel, and I have to pause sometime and just let it sink in. But with that, could you just name one thing that surprised you? And one thing that was confirmed?
I think what was confirming was what happens out at Beck's Lake.
Okay.
It's not surprising, but it was confirming, getting the report from the EPA, and I'm sure Judy, the housing chair, can attest to that.
So, yeah, reading the EPA stuff was very confirming of what everybody was telling us was happening.
The what? Say that again?
The Environmental Protection
Okay.
Agency's reports on Beck's Lake, we incorporated those into our report. And that was very, I would say, conforming into what we had heard from people. To me, the most surprising thing, and I put it in the report, but it still bothers me, was the landlord and tenant who came in together. The tenant was black, no longer the tenant, but he had been the tenant. The landlord was white. The landlord wanted to sell him the house because he lived into it for a long time. The tenant went down to get a loan. This is in the 90s, and was told that that area was redlined. We can't give you a loan. The landlord maybe broke the law, but went down and pretended to be the tenant, gave the same information, saying whatever. He was white, and he was instantly given a mortgage. And, you know, people say this is all historical. It doesn't happen anymore. Yeah, it really does.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Back to that point, for the persons or people who may be watching or reading who say that we're wasting time, that this is something that's in the past, and this is race politics that we're doing, what would you say to them?
Until you walk in our shoes, you can't say that there's time wasted. There is a segment of the community that have suffered and continue to suffer. There's systemic racism, whether we want to address it or not. The elephant in the room has to be addressed. And until one segment of that community has been rectified for the wrongs that have been done, we as a community cannot thrive.
So my second question goes along with that question. If you're a white resident in this city, live on the east side, south side, don't live at Beck's Lake, what do you get out of this kind of a situation? Is it a blaming my parents, my grandparents? What do you get out of this kind of report? Because is this something that only Black people get? But what does the white person, the Asian person, the person who's not African American, Negro American, what do they get out of this report for them to say, you know, we're just doing this for African American? What does the white person get out of this?
I'm not speaking on behalf of the commission. This is Trina speaking.
I hear you.
And
I'm
so
listening.
Trina would say, you need to sit down with your neighbors and better understand the plight that they go through and stop using stereotypes and blaming games, but understand what it is that's going on. You can go to one side of a town and see that there are businesses that are no longer there. It's not that we're asking for preferential treatment. We're asking to sit at the table and have a slice of the pie. And that's all that we're asking. When one group does well, all group does well. And if you had a child that was not doing well in school, you would not throw that child to the wolves. You would do whatever is necessary to ensure that that child succeed as your other children. And so we are all children. And in order for one to succeed, we have to build that child up so that they can measure up as the other children that are in this community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Attorney Fox.
So you might have noticed that I'm not Black. So I can
Well,
kind of answer that question. I think it's really important to point out that we're not blaming individuals,
Mhm.
right? We're not saying, oh, you know, you over there, you caused this, but you also can't ignore history, right? And history can repeat itself if it's ignored. So, you know, if somebody started a fire and burned down the street, I don't care how it happened, you still need to fix the street, right? And I think we're in the situation where these are our neighbors. This is our community. If you want a healthy community, everybody in the community has to be healthy. And so this is a matter of fairness, really, of these things happen. You can try to deny them, but we've given you the facts. These things happen, and there are results from those. So maybe some of those things aren't still happening, but the results of those things are still lingering. And we need to address those results to bring everybody up, because if we bring everybody up, we bring the whole community up.
Thank you so kindly for that. Oh, one more? You were gonna say something? Go
Dr.
ahead.
Davis,
No, I'm gonna say she was going there. Go ahead, respond.
I just wanted to add, I also think in society, there are biases everywhere. And we all, whether we see them or feel them, it occurs. And I think that's the other aspect of it, of there are many different aspects, even looking at poverty, for example, looking and diving into poverty. It is not just the Black and African American population group that have within different neighborhoods living in poverty. I think that it's important to understand and see how it also applies, and reiterating of being neighbors and wanting to come together and support the residents of the community. But to your first question, I just wanted to add too of, I think that the health outcomes speak to that, of how this is important and still true to today.
Thank you so much for all of your comments. I appreciate your insights.
Thank you. Dr. Beininger.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for this report. In the 3 years that you all have put into this report, I have two questions. I'm wondering, Trina, you indicated that the commission is going to continue to do work. I wonder if you could just say a word or two about how long you think that's going to be going on? There are giggles behind you.
Yeah.
But I wondered, what you're thinking about in terms of the process. Like, I think some of us probably thought that once the report was submitted, now the commission is done and can disband. What would you say to that? What do you think the next steps of the commission are?
I have committed myself to be one of those that it's the oversight committee. No disrespect to anybody here or to the offices of the powers to be, but we've seen people come in and give testimonies. We've seen documents. We've seen reports on how bad South Bend is as it relates to racial discriminations and disparities. And so what we see is those documents are sitting on a shelf. And there's no implementation. And so when I was offered to take on as the chair, my commitment was I will not have my name attached to anything that sits on a desk. And so therefore, for however long it takes to ensure that this is implemented, I'm up for the fight. And some of the commission members have said that they will do so as well, but others have they're tired, and I understand.
Wow. Well, thank you for your commitment to that. And certainly I support that. The second question that I had was, you guys have talked about Beck's Lake. Can you tell us the status of Beck's Lake?
There's a little bit of disagreement about that. And I think on the 29th, we'll be able to talk about that more. And I think Councilmember Davis has a meeting on Thursday, but I'm assuming he's going to talk about that. So looking at the documents from the EPA, they say that the cleanup has begun but not finished. Conversations with the city said that it was their understanding that the work was finished. So there seems to be a disconnect there that we had committed, if the city could get us more information, we could update the report, we could add or whatever. But it's just very confusing to me. Everything we looked at come from the EPA website, and that's what they say, that it's begun, but it's not finished. The city says it's finished. I don't know the answer to your question. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, what have you all seen other reparatory justice commissions do across the country, and how have they implemented their recommendations?
It's a mixed bag. Some of them, the ones that have actually been able to do the most, have a source of revenue that we don't have, marijuana tax. Some of them have, which is one of our recommendations somewhere in the report, have created funds through something like the community forum, outside of the city. Most of them are not paying actual money. I think Evanston was the first one that came about, and essentially they created 2 programs that were only related to housing. A lot of them do focus first on housing because, basically that's the big one that everybody can prove. So it's been a mixed bag, right? I think California would probably be the next one that's really getting things rolling. And most of them are creating programs for things like home ownership or small businesses or those kinds of things. So that's where we are. There's more and more activity happening, but the current political climate has kind of stalled everything right now.
Thank you.
There are some that have, in fact, embraced endowments from different organizations, but primarily the ones I looked at came up with policy recommendations. Let's change this. Let's make it be different. Let's not continue on in the same area of disparity or whatever. But most of it has just been policy changes.
And then what would you say is the difference between reparations and reparatory justice?
Ooh.
Because many people
She's pushing
hear
me out of the way.
reparations.
We talked about this a
Yes,
lot, so
we did,
go,
yeah.
go,
We
Trina,
did.
go.
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about was we are the Reparatory Justice Commission, and what we're looking for is systemic change, change that will last beyond a dollar amount. And so when we thought about reparations, how do we determine who gets the reparations? Some will say, okay, are you a implant of the city of South Bend, or are you a native? And so to make sure, to try to identify those individuals, we felt that it was important that we did reparatory justice so that we can see change that will last throughout a lifetime, probably not in my lifetime, perhaps in some of our kids, grandkids' lifetime.
So, again, your question before looking at what some other places have done, we did get a lot of information from, Evanston, right? I would say it wrong. Evanston, which was like sort of the first one to get going. And they came back and said, we started off by paying reparations, but realized that that wasn't solving the problem, right? So you can give somebody money and then the money's gone and the systems that caused the problem are still there. So that's why we wanted to focus on reparatory justice to change the structures of things so that these things don't happen in the future.
Thank you so much.
Reparatory justice, repair.
Right.
As simple as that, repair.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, comments. Yep, we'll open up. Is there anyone from the public, Clerk Toronto, that would like to speak?
Ms.
Please come.
Waddell, if you could unmute yourself.
I think
And-
we're going to go to individuals in the chambers first, and
Yeah.
then we'll move to residents wanting to speak online. So if you are wanting to speak in the chambers, please come up to the podium and probably make a line this way going back.
And you have 3 minutes.
And you will have 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, she said 5 minutes.
It's
Oh,
5 minutes, yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so if I have 5 minutes.
Yes.
I'd
Please
like-
state your name
And-
and address, please.
And if those who want to speak, if you can come and line up so that we still have a whole portion of our meeting we still got to do, but we want to hear from you. So if you could line up and then state your name and address for the record.
Nimbilasha Cushing, 1040 Washington, South Bend, 46601. Since I have 5 minutes and thought I only had 3, I'd like to say that I am encouraged by what I'm hearing from the commission. But my statement I'm going to read because I have it, but I'm very encouraged at the response that I've heard already. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am president of the South Bend Reparations Working Group. We formed our group after attending a lecture presented by Dr. Darrell Heller, director of the Civil Rights Heritage Center. The talk that Dr. Heller gave in August of 2019 was titled, "Why the Need for Reparations?" He spoke to a packed house and described the long history of the oppression of Black people. Following that talk, our working group was formed. Our mission is to advocate for reparations at the local, state, and federal level as a way of acknowledging and repairing the harm caused by historic and current injustices experienced by African American descendants of slavery and its aftermaths, and to educate the public on these issues. We are a private group unrelated to the Reparatory Justice Commission, which was formed, as you know, in September of 2023 by the council. We enthusiastically support the work done by the commission. The charge delegated to that body by the Common Council was to study, This is a quote, "to study aspects of reparatory justice for the harms and injustices experienced by African Americans and other Black people of African descent as individuals and as a group," end of quote. They, the commission, carried out the duties and directives entrusted to them, even through changes in their membership. Extensive research was carried out through subcommittees. They studied the most critical areas of discrimination and the lasting effects on South Bend's Black citizens from the 1920s to the present. The critical areas identified were economic systems, education, health, both general and mental, housing, policing, and the criminal legal system. The commission was composed of individuals from varied backgrounds, including educators, attorneys, healthcare professionals, and pastors. Their research was documented only after it had been checked and cross-referenced, as it is evident by the final 15 pages of their 138-page report. We applaud the effort, energy, and time that the commission members put into this report. We support the overall analysis and recommendations, and we encourage the council to approve the recommendations and put them into effect. We stand ready to assist in implementing those recommendations wherever possible. In doing so, it will be vitally important to create the committee called for in the report to track progress. To do anything less would reduce the excellent work already completed to one of futility. The wheel of justice in this matter has been created. The council and the community must now ensure its movement forward. Thank you.
Next person, please. State your name and address for the record.
Carolyn Moore, 2026 Rock Maple Court, South Bend, Indiana. I am a living example of everything that they just went through. I am a living example. And I am encouraged today because of their report, because I am 74 years old. And because of the programs and things that were in place, that I am who I am today. And I like your question, sir. Why would white people look at this? I want you to understand that this is not just a Black thing. Women, people, humans are in trouble. So why should it matter to white people? Because all of us are suffering. All of them are going to suffer. And why should they do anything about it? Because they are suffering. All you're talking about is what's happening to Blacks. And I know that there's a lot of Black organizations that are thinking that I'm not focusing just on Black. But first of all, I'm a human being. And I'm already a second-class citizen because I'm female. That includes every woman in this room. And if democracy and if this process is not put in place, there will be no room and safety for any of us who are women, regardless to the color of our skin. So I thank you for your question. And I thank you for this group, because now I know that there is something in place that is going to help. And I wanted to say this to answer your question. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
David Buggs, 21710 Ravenna Drive, South Bend, Indiana. Served as one of the original members of the Reparatory Justice Commission. And a lot of hard work gone into this. Just a bit of history. I'm told this story once or twice. 4 brothers, none of them made it to be a senior citizen. Each one of them suffered from one of the aspects, if not more, of what each of these subcommittees discussed today. My only sister, because of not, and I've talked with her today before I came, told her I might say something. But she suffered a stroke postpartumly. Black woman, almost passed away. They came in and served her last rites, priest, but through our prayers and efforts, she made it through. We taught her how to walk again. Issues that happen to African Americans when they're overlooked. And also to address the issue with others that look on the issues with African Americans. We talked about adverse childhood experiences, right? Every one of those people, we talked about 1910 and when they came into the city, all those people they were children at one time. They suffered issues. We know that ACEs causes you to have all type of lifelong issues that then become generational. Am I correct? So our responsibility is to help our next generation, because this is just feeding into their health issues without any remedy. So the remedy, the responsibility to deal with it comes immediate from the people who are able to hear it. There's no waiting to deal with this. We have a policing issue. My only concern about the commission is that we didn't deal with that. This is a historic situation. There's never been a time where you could say our police systems, our jails, the death rate, African American, it's necessary for me to be up as an African American man talking with you today. How can we allow this to go on without intervention? Trina, you did a good job. The only thing I will argue, we can't wait. We have to deal with the issue of policing. We have to deal with the issue of incarceration. We have to deal with the issue of over-sentencing. All of these issues have to be dealt with and have to be dealt with immediately. There is no reason that I didn't have an opportunity to see my male siblings at my age right now. There's no reason that they all had to go through the penal system and their life was cut short because societal ills. There's no reason that I had to almost witness my sister's death because of lack of attention to her medical condition. Now you tell someone, you ask someone, why should they listen to this? Because it is wrong. And the problem with it, it continues and it will not stop until we intervene with policies that reverse it. And I have confidence in each one of you that you will lead that charge. That's why we voted for you. Not just to listen and to say, wow. But to be actively involved in the work of this commission and change the plight of a people that were brought in not because of their decision to be here. Their issues that they have is not because of their decision to be here, it's because of the inequities that was placed upon them when coming to these shores. And it has to stop. And if you don't stop it, who else is going to do it? We can have a commission that convenes for the next 10 years, and it will not change unless leadership stand up and take the risk to deal with these issues, debate the issues, and make substantive change. So I'm Pastor Buggs, and that's what I have to say about this.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening to the council and all that are here tonight. Um, I'm Kat Redding, 1409 minor. I'd like to actually say thank you first to Henry Davis, who wrote this piece of legislation, and I'd like to thank Sharon McBride for assembling the repertory study because, as we all know, as my work in the community, we're quite busy with making sure that the issues of racism is at the forefront of the public eye, and often we're ostracized and outcasted and put into our own asylums. So I want to say tonight is a very confirmatory night as well for us because all of the issues that we've raised are present in the study. And I just want to thank Oliver Davis also for being present with pushing the council and the clerk's office on this piece of legislation to be in the view of the public after the work has been done with the repertory study, making that ready and available to the community and making it public that these issues have been raised. And we've been fighting all of these injustices that were named, and quite often we're treated as if we're doing something wrong. So I am very much so feeling very grateful for today, and I am also very eager to see implementation happen. And I know many are saying that these things are not going to happen overnight, but I suggest that the people, the elders in this community that have stood by our side and stood with us get to see the change happen before they're no longer here with us. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. Steve White, 3111 Council Oak Drive, South Bend, Indiana. First of all, I want to thank the Common Council for getting this repertory report done. I want to thank the commission for an excellent job. Very, very excellent job. Fabulous. A wise man once said, "The government decides the winners and the losers." If we would summarize this report and look at every area, you would notice that the government had a part in each area. I guess the new term is foundational Black Americans are at the bottom of each one of those categories. Without reparations or a repertory remedy, I don't see how it can be resolved. Reparations has to be done. And the government has to be the one who makes sure it happens. They control the resources, they determine the policies, and they're making decisions. And I'm looking at this dynamic common council, and I'm confident that you're going to do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else is coming, please, I want you to line up so we can make sure everybody get a chance to speak.
Okay, I'll speak briefly. Ann Mannix, 724 West Washington. Like Steve, I think the report was excellent. It was exhaustive. It was very tiring to me to keep seeing racism repeated over and over. I would like to focus on the implementation part of the report and what does the committee want the council to do? So you make CDBG, I know about housing. You make CDBG recommendations every year. So how would this report change how you do that? Our LaSalle Park has a plan, the city's done a plan. So how's that going to be implemented to change the racial dynamics of things, the TIF money? So I would like to see specific things that could be done. So the council, I know you all are good people and can do things. So let's try to focus down and see what we can do.
Gladys Muhammad, 808 North Ironwood. I just want to say thank you to the city council and especially to Sharon McBride for authorizing this. And also I want to say thank you to all of you that worked on this. Volunteer. Y'all need to hear that word, volunteer, because they gave a lot of time to this. And you've done an excellent job, just wonderful. And keep in mind, silent voices cannot be heard. We heard your voices today. Silent voices cannot be heard. That's why they had to speak out and do what they needed to do to make progress happen in our community, to make the change occur. And I don't know who gonna make it occur, but y'all have done a wonderful job. So give yourselves a big old hand. And I grew up on Beck's Lake Dump, where the trash was, where the garbage was, and I'm still standing. Thank you.
If that's all the individuals that are in the chambers, we'll now go online. If you're online and you would like to speak, I can't see it, but Clerk Toronto.
All right, Miss Batiste Waddell, if you could unmute yourself and turn your camera on. You will need to unmute yourself now that you're unlocked. We are unable to unmute you now that you're unlocked. You'll have to do that.
Thank you. You just did it. I appreciate you, Bianca. It wasn't that way. Thank you. Are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Waddell.
Are you there now?
Yeah.
Are you there now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if that was my end or yours. You guys are still lagging. Are you still there?
Go ahead. I think we can hear you. It might be a little
Okay, I
delay in your
appreciate you,
video.
Mr. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Good evening. Uh-oh, hold on. See, it's lagging.
But if you go ahead and speak, we
Okay,
can hear
now
you.
it's working. It's working now. I don't know what that was. Good evening. My name is Tiana Batiste Waddell, 330 West Colfax Avenue, South Bend, Indiana. Thank you to the Repertory Commission for validating data that many residents already knew. I support the recommendations in the report, and in addition to those recommendations, I also support checks being issued to all residents deserving of them based on the data. It is not Black Americans' responsibility to solve any problems, as we know we did not cause this harm, but instead white people did, and their descendants enabled the harm. It is our duty and our right to receive what we are deserving of. I am here tonight because I have a simple question. Why has no one responded to my emails? I've sent at least 3 of them. Residents are constantly being told to follow the process, send the email, attend the meeting, submit the comment, engage with the leadership. I have done all of those things regarding the recently presented report documenting historical and systemic harm to Black residents in South Bend and St. Joseph County. Yet, despite multiple attempts to engage, I have received little to no response. So what message does that send to the community? If residents are expected to follow the process, shouldn't our elected leaders be expected to respond to it? Now that there is a formal report, now that the data has been collected, now that the harms have been documented, what is next? We don't need to wait for them to say, oh, the commission isn't done. I can already hear people trying to make up excuses. You guys have the power to start doing stuff now. Will the mayor publicly address the report? Will the Common Council and county commissioners commit to reviewing it? Which you just did, thank you so much, but where's the county at? Will there be a public plan of action? Will that be communicated? Will resources be allocated to address the disparities identified? We are in the budget season. We should be talking about what money is going to be allocated to at least clean up something. There's got to be money put aside starting now. And when will the community expect a formal acknowledgement and apology for the racial harms that have been impacted by Black residents for generations? The report should not be the end of the conversation. It should be the beginning of accountability. The community deserves more than silence. We deserve transparency, leadership, and a clear commitment to action. So again, I ask, what is next, and will the public hear from our leaders? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Marty Wolfson, if you could unmute yourself and turn your camera on. You're still muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Marty, can you hear us? We can see you, but you're still muted. If you want to click the microphone down there and that will unmute you so you can begin.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that.
No worries. Please state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Marty Wolfson. I live at 809 Park Avenue in South Bend. I'm the Vice President of the South Bend Reparations Working Group, referred to earlier by our President, Nimby Cushing. I strongly support her statement. And of course, when we say reparations, we also mean reparatory justice. I also strongly support the analysis and recommendations from the Reparatory Justice Commission. And like others, I appreciate all the hard work that the commission members did as well as the excellent presentation tonight. Our group has spoken to people in a number of different organizations about the need for reparations. From those talks and from other conversations, there are a number of questions about reparations that have been raised. The first is, why are you supporting reparations for Black people? Don't you, as a white person, benefit from the situation as it is? Well, it is true that when applying for a job or a promotion, housing, or other opportunities, if one group is discriminated against, another group benefits. And that group is most often white people. Nevertheless, white people should support reparations because it is a matter of justice. I, as a white person, can't change how I was born, but I can fight against injustice. I can work to create a society in which all people can relate to each other as equals. And to create that society, we need to work together as equals. Also, if one group can suffer discrimination, then so can others. As Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. A second question is, why are you focusing on Black people? There are others who face discrimination and difficulties. Well, yes, that's true, but only Black people faced 250 years of slavery. The enslavers didn't want Black people to earn income, own their own homes or land, build wealth, or even learn to read and write. Slavery was followed by 100 years of Jim Crow, and continuing to this day, discrimination in every aspect of society, as we've heard tonight. We understand that there are many people who face discrimination and who are struggling. We support a decent standard of living and a life free of discrimination and oppression for all Americans. The third question is, why are you even talking about slavery? I didn't own any slaves. Why are you asking me to pay for it? No, we as individuals didn't take part in slavery, but we as a society did. And it is the responsibility of our society to repair the harms that were done. And I appreciate the Reparatory Justice Commission and the council for taking steps to make that happen. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online? One more.
I see two people with their hands raised, but you will need to list your residential address and turn your camera on.
Yes.
Frank, are you still there? Since you have not listed your address, Henry, you can go. You'll just need to turn your camera on and unmute yourself and list your address.
Are you
Henry,
there?
you can unmute yourself and turn your camera on. You've been given permission.
Hey, there we go. It just happened because I've been pushing it for like the last 5 minutes. Thank you. Henry Davis Jr., 5117 Idlewood Drive is my address. I have 4 things. I think it's 3 things I need to get real fast. You have a mental health commission. You guys need to look at Madison Center and their impact on mental health, especially as it relates to Black children for the time that they were open. You will probably see a lawsuit, a fraud lawsuit, and some other things that really impacted the care of Black kids, African American kids who used a Madison Center because of quote unquote mental health issues. Check that out. That's a big one. That's a very, very big one. I don't know how to miss that. You said we have a policing problem. I heard it like 3 times. I can't understand how we have a policing problem. And a gentleman who's the current police chief is running for sheriff, and he just won the Democratic nomination. Unsure what that is, but I think that probably should be checked as individuals, your heart. The system cannot regulate that. If we participate in the system properly, that wouldn't happen. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is the covenant for housing. There was a covenant signed by the city of South Bend when we had the meeting about Bex Lake. I don't know, it's been about, I don't know how many years it's been. It's been a few years. And what I am going to say is that there was several places within this covenant that the city entered into an agreement, signed off, Mayor James Mueller along with some other folks. And within that covenant, it listed out what could not be done in LaSalle Park area, in LaSalle Park neighborhood. You're talking about housing, you're talking about soil removal, you're talking about so many other things that we did discuss, or you guys did discuss this evening. Those things are not allowed anymore per the covenant. I'm not sure why the covenant was signed, but we were permanently disabled by the covenant because of a signature from the mayor. And so if we're talking about reparatory justice, we're talking about reparations, LaSalle Park area cannot recover because the mayor signed off and said these things cannot happen. Those very things that we are talking about, that we're asking for in LaSalle Park, cannot happen per this covenant, legal binding agreement. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. So I think that it needs to be checked out as well. If you need me to send an email of what I have, what I've researched, what I have guided, I can do that as well. But I would also ask that this conversation, as it relates to housing, continues to persist within Mr. Well, I don't know whose committee it is, but it's residential committee, the subcommittee. I'm going to ask that that happens on a regular and consistent basis until we can get to a point or to a place where we're all happy. It just seems like a real bad setup right now, and it doesn't benefit the people who are really pushing this reparations discussion. It does not help us at all. As a matter of fact, it puts us off the bus. We don't even get a seat at the back of the bus. Thank you.
Okay. One more.
Frank, your camera is now enabled. If you could turn it on, as well as your microphone. You are still muted.
Are you there?
It looks like you're loading, but you'll need to unmute. It's in the bottom right corner. Are you able to hear us? If you click on the microphone, it will unmute you. You will need to unmute. We don't have the capabilities to unmute from your end. He was in the chat initially, but Mr. Frank,
If you're not able to unmute yourself, can you please put your comments in the chat? Oh, I think you're unmuted now.
Yeah, I was disconnected from the entire program, and I just now found it a way to get back in.
Are you able to turn on your camera, please?
I did.
We just see your initials and not your, we need to see your video.
Yeah, and I clicked on that too. And I was able to unmute. And now I can hear you, you can hear me, but I can see you, but you can't see me. So I don't understand why that's happening.
You can continue with your comments, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great. It's just a real short request. Thank you for letting me speak. I would like to request a meeting and invite Councilwoman Karen White and Councilwoman
We also need you,
Ophelia.
we also need you to give your name and your address.
Okay, Frank Neiman.
Are you looking to speak for privilege of the floor, or you're looking to speak about the repertory justice?
Yeah, I put in my chat that I just wanted to speak at the privilege of the floor section.
Okay. All right. Well, we will get to that in a moment. And once we get through, we still have some part of our meeting that we have to get to. So if you will hang tight, you'll be able to speak during the privilege of the floor. And by that time, maybe you'll figure out how to get your camera turned on. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Is there
you.
anyone else? All right, at this point, the public hearing portion of this part is done. I will now let council members give their final comments, starting with Councilwoman Karen White.
Thank you, President Lee. I first would want to express my deep appreciations to the members of the commission. Your hard work, extensive research, and commitment to truth telling. I'm going to say that again, to truth telling has produced a tremendous report. The time, the expertise that you have invested is very evident on every page. And when you talk about, when I was reading through the report and the knowledge and just going through it, it was a very painful experience for me because a lot of the things that had been identified, I experienced as a young child growing up on the lake and moved towards the west side. And so again, tonight presentation marks not the end of the work, but the beginning of the work as we move forward. And it will not go on the shelves. And I think that is so important that, you know, all the time that's been spent, and a lot of times reports just goes on the shelves. And so I appreciate the chair making that statement in regards to, you know, not just going through the process and there's no action. I would like to say that it's important that as we move forward, we must move forward with clarity, structure, and transparency. That's begin to look at the report, measurable outcomes, actions, but also the advancing equity and strengthening the future of our citizens, especially the African Americans within our community as well. I'm going to share with you, this was sent to me recently, and I just want to share this person put together a handout, and the guiding question that he had put in the handout is that given what has now been formally documented and acknowledged, what responsible action should South Bend take next to create a more just, healthy, economically, and more strong and unified future for all of our citizens, especially those that have been harmed, as we have the information before us. So again, I thank you so much. We have work to do, but we are up for the work. And as we continue and hopefully work together, it's going to take more than just one group. It's going to take all of us. And as we continue to walk in truth and transparency, I'm quite sure that we will be able to get the job done.
Councilwoman McBride.
Thank you, Pastor Lee, and thank you all again for coming and giving your full report. And it is tough. I am one who was born and raised on the lake, and so lived those experiences, and still have family, living in the area as well. So this has been a great call to action. And the community have spoken. You guys have done the work and continuing to do so. I am glad that you have addressed the needs. There's a lot of times that people don't like to talk about things that pain other people, but this is our reality. And it's hard sometimes it's hard for us to listen to, but we've lived it. I remember even being just as the last graduating class of LaSalle High School. So before the Plan Z was implemented. So there's just a number of things. I do want to give a shout out to 466 Works, who is part of them are here, and the neighborhood, because I know for a long time I've been hearing, I wasn't in office when the 1,000 homes in 1,000 days or something, I think that's the right terminology, were, but I am grateful that, with the work of 466 Works specifically on the southeast side, we talked about some of those homes have been infilled and will continue to do so, and will spread throughout other areas of the city. We still have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of harms that has happened in the past over the several years, and it's not going to take overnight to do it, but there are some low-hanging fruit. There are things that we can do immediately. There are things that we can continue to work and strive to make sure that everyone has a better quality of life. So I am excited to get the report, and we do need to make sure that we are speaking truth and being able to have conversations that are real, and to see how we can provide some to close the gap and ensure that we have policy and things that impact the community, and make sure that we are moving and continue to move in the right direction. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rachel Thomas Morgan.
Thank you. We woke up this morning with a fire at 8 o'clock this morning at the Lafayette building. And I woke up and watched the news and felt this strange kind of irony that this morning the Lafayette building was on fire. And it's a historical building, a gorgeous building, but a historical building that in 2025, a historical marker was placed to honor J. Chester Allen and Elizabeth Fletcher Allen, who were named and acknowledged in your report for the work that they've done to champion civil rights and housing in our community. And so I had this image in my mind of, a building going up in fire and ashes. And as I started off this morning, and I end this evening with just real hope that can come out of those ashes, I think. And I really want to share my deep gratitude for all of you on the commission, those of you present and past. It is clear in every page in this report the amount of time and energy and the collective work that has gone into this very important documenting of the history of the African American Black community in South Bend. One of you said, we cannot ignore history. And that's what's so significant about this report. This won't allow us to ignore history. It's documented. And I think it is a real important step to addressing the harms that you have named. And I look forward to taking next steps, to reading this for the third time and fifth time, and receiving additional information on the final subcommittee. And then finally, I just want to say that I believe that rising tides lifts all boats. And so when we address harms done to a particular community in our neighborhood, it helps us all. And we can move to create a better, more equitable, and just community for every citizen in our city. Thank you again for your work, and let's carry on.
All right. We're going to go to the end. Sherry Bolden Simpson, Councilwoman Sherry Bolden Simpson.
Thank you. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Saturday, several schools had commencement. Rise Up Academy was one, and I was given the privilege of not only being the director of guidance, at the last moment I had to sing the song. And I really thought about that. I knew this meeting was coming up, that we have to face some things. And so let me say real fast. Let me start out by honoring my mother, Ruth Bolden, 90 years old, still pulling weeds from the garden, came from Arkansas, Jim Crow, Arkansas. I once said that to somebody, and they said, is Jim Crow a city? Oh, my goodness. Thank you to Ruth and Maxie, who had the courage to move into the Sunnymead area in 1973, where a person commenced to have a petition to make us move out. Thank you to my mom and dad that had the courage to tell me about this. Unfortunately, in 1985, the first year my husband and I were married, a landlord told me to my face, I usually don't rent to coloreds, but my wife told me, you're about to be a teacher, so I should. 1987, when we bought our first house, I thought buying a house was based on, do you have the income? Do you pay your bills? But suddenly they wanted to see my degree, even though my real estate agent was my math teacher in the math department where I taught. He looked at them crazy. You think she's up here teaching because she's cute? I am cute, but I have to have a degree. Anyway, I should digress. Oftentimes, we put the heavy lifting of repair on the subjugated, i.e. Black students were bussed out of their neighborhoods to integrate schools. Black people are asked to be patient, stay calm, let it go. I challenge my white brothers and sisters to choose that one Black person that you think you have a relationship with and initiate them in a conversation where you do the listening. Just listen, and it will take courage. If you feel bad, that's a normal emotion. It's normal to feel pain. I also want to acknowledge the anguish that the committee went through, because my heart rate rises. Even though I knew pretty much nothing was a surprise to me, but I actually experienced elevated heart rate. And you know, time after time, having that happen, that's why we are predisposed to high blood pressure. So I commend you. You're so brave. I also want to do recommended reading. The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone. That is truly a book that will open your eyes. And finally, I recommend that we do what Goshen City did. In March 17, 2015, they publicly acknowledged and apologized for being a sundown town. We have to live up to that. Let's face our future with a smile and remember the past so we don't repeat it. Thank you. Enough thank yous to the committee. It's just not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Davis.
2007, when I was blessed to be elected, we had a chance to have somebody to swear us in. And a lot of people chose the children that night. And I told my daughter she couldn't do it. She said, why not? I said, because we're going to have grandpa do it. She said, oh, okay. And then she said, that's the only one I'll let do it. I chose grandpa, my father, who's still alive. He's 96. He's a Korean War veteran. And he won a Bronze Star. And growing up with him and his stories about how he and my mother in the South had to sit in the back of the bus, how they had to sit in segregated houses. I moved here in 1992. I brought my father up here one day and I took him around Transpo. I showed him my name. I'm named after my father. I said, that's your name. That's your name, the first black president of Transpo. That's your name. I'm the first black male social worker in South Bend Schools history. I said, that's your name. That's your name, Daddy. That's your name. And for my father to sit there every time he saw my name elected, you know, for everybody else, they see my name. For my dad, he sees his name. A man who couldn't vote now sees his son could vote. And that is something else that we talked about. He said, send me the clips, send me the clips. I did that all the way until dementia got there. And I still go back and I still show him his name. So while you see my name, it's my dad's name. It's my dad's name who fought in the war. He said as soon as they got closer to Korea, his commanding officer said, we all drink out the same canteen. But when they came back to the shores, that separated. On my birth certificate, it doesn't say that I'm African-American. It doesn't say I'm black. I told my daughter I'm not black. She said, what are you? I said, I'm a Negro. I'm 57 years old, but on my birth certificate, I'm born in Alabama, it says I'm a Negro. When I go to the Indiana to get my license, the BMV, I still show them my Negro papers in 2026. She said, can't you change that? I said, can I change that? I was born on October 13th. Can I change my parents? Can I change my hospital? I'm a Negro. That's on my legal documents. So that's why I had the passion to get this report out. That's why I had the passion to move forward. That's why I had the passion to make sure this was heard tonight, because of my father. He's helped me to realize that we cannot wait. In the city of Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson signed an executive order in 2024 establishing a Black reparation agenda that issued a formal apology to Black Chicagoans for the historical and present-day harm caused by slavery. In the city of Boston, Michelle Wu, in 2023, issued a formal apology to two Black men. And in the city of Cincinnati, their mayor delivered a formal apology. In the city of Louisville, Greg Fisher publicly apologized on behalf of the city for generations of institutional racism. Why can't South Bend? Dr. King says why we cannot wait. Why we cannot wait in his landmark book. We can't wait. He argues that African Americans can no longer submit to the gradual, slow-paced approach to civil rights because waiting on the oppressor for freedom historically results in never receiving it. And he wrote that back when he was fighting in the 1963 campaign in my home state. Why we can't wait. And like you have said today, this wasn't a Southern issue. The Southern issue always gets told, but it was a Northern issue. It was right here, South Bend. The South came to the bend. And we have to see, and we have to correct when the South came to the bend for those kind of issues. And so on tomorrow, I am glad to announce that I will be pushing forward and sending out to the council our apology. I have already worked to that, and we're going to have that signed, and we're going to start that tomorrow. That's your first recommendation. And so I'm not waiting for the 5 or 6 more weeks. We're going to get that sent up to the council for tomorrow. And so we can get that apology. That's the least of what we can do. Because if you don't say sorry, I'm a school social worker. The last day of school today, yay, praises, But when the kids come to me, the first thing they got to work on is, can we talk? I'm over at Dickinson, the only African-American school named after African-American, Jesse Dickinson, who was a state legislator. I'm proud to work in that school for 12 years because of standing up for Jesse Dickinson and what he did for this community. And the thing about it is, I talk to my kids all the time, can we at least apologize? We got to live in this building, y'all. We got to live in this building, okay? Y'all may not like me. Sometimes I don't like y'all, but let's live. Okay, Mr. Dave. All right. We got to at least start with the apology. And tomorrow, that's what we're going to start off, is start off with that apology. Where would it go from there? I don't know. But I tell people, I'm the at-large person. And we have to work with everybody, because when we apologize on the south side, on the west side, on the north side, and east side, we all become a stronger city. And that's where I have to look at. That's why I asked my question. This is not just for Black people. It's not just for white people. It's for Hispanics. It's for Asians. It's for Germans. It's Polish. It's everybody. We all South Bend. And so we have to start not 5 weeks from now. We've already waited long enough. Y'all finished this work in December. We here in June. So therefore, we need to start tomorrow. Within 24 hours of this night, we will follow what Dr. King says, and we won't wait. We won't wait. I already got gray hair, and we're going to make sure that before some of y'all who couldn't hardly get on the mic, y'all been fighting this way before I was born. Let's make sure that you have this done tonight. And may God bless us. And thank you all to the commission. Thank this whole committee. Thank this council. And let's move forward. And thank all of y'all, because we're going to do this. And we're going to follow up with that covenant. We got to figure out what happened with that covenant, because that's a serious issue. I thank even the chief of staff for being here tonight. I'm glad to see him walking here tonight, because we have to, Mr. Chief of Staff Warner, thank you. We have to have a combination between the city administration and the city council to do this. It's not all on us. It's on the mayor as well as on us, on the school corporation, on the county council, on the health department, on all of us to come together, Democrat, Republicans, because we all got to help to build this city. We are South Bend, and let's correct when the South came to the Bend. Thank you. I appreciate you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Dr. Beidinger.
Okay, you all try to follow up now after Dr. Davis. Just very quickly, what I want to add to this conversation is that in my experience, that if you cannot name it, you cannot talk about it. If you can't name it, you can't problem solve it. Racism is really, really hard stuff, really hard, and people don't like to talk about it, but you all documented it. You all talked about it, and now we're having this conversation. There is no going back now. The line has been drawn in the sand. There are smart people in this room who have worked for years on this, and then the experiences that people are sharing in this room. There is no going back. The line in the sand has been drawn. You named it. And now we get to discuss it. We get to implement some changes. I want to say publicly that I am committed to this and that I want to be one of those leaders who contributes to making that change. Thanks.
Amen.
Vice President Niskowski.
Thank you, President Lee. And thank you to the commission and everybody, all the subcommittee, everybody, you did a tremendous job. And just listening to the passion in your voices for a lot of you that worked on these, how hard it was, and how long it took. Maybe it took long, but I think you got it right. So yeah, I really appreciate the work you're doing. There was a lot of discussion up here today. It's kind of hard to follow 8 council members. We are a woman majority council, and we are a minority majority council, or a Black majority council. And this report was drawn up when Sharon and I was president and vice president, and she decided that this is what the community needed. So I guess what I'm saying is the group of people that we have here in one way or another are tied together. We all see it in the community. We see it in the districts that we represent from a district level, and at large, of course, that is the city as the whole. Myself, I can't speak to these experiences that my fellow Black council members have. I can speak to the experiences of a woman. I can experience, as the lady so spoke to us, being a woman or a Black woman. I can speak to those. But to say that I'm a person of color, I can't, but I understand them. And I'm glad that this report was done. It is hard to read and it's hard to talk about. And it's a difficult subject for many people on many levels. But I think that this is a good starting point. As I combed through, I read the report twice. I see a lot of things that have been somewhat implemented, things that we can work on. I think of Dr. Beidinger being on here when we talk about lead issues, when we talk about health disparities. She was with the health department. Myself, as Ms. White knows, I spent a lot of time on the lead program. So I think as we work through, you know, it's not anything that's going to happen overnight. I know they said, oh, it has to happen now. Well, newsflash, things just don't happen overnight. They don't. It is going to take time. This report took a lot of time, and implementing meaningful changes will take a little bit of time. But I can commit to you sitting here that I have the time and I have the commitment. And I just thank everyone for everything they've achieved. And thank you, my sister from another mother, as we all often say. Sharon, for getting this together for all of us to sit down, have an open, honest conversation. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. And I will be the last to say again to you all, thank you all, but you cannot leave to the end of this meeting. We're in this together, all right? We still got 10 items to go through on this, so we're gonna stay here tonight together so y'all can see what we all go through. My father came from Statesboro, Georgia to work for Studebaker because he didn't want to work in the turpentine factories. My mother's parents came from DeKalb, Mississippi because they didn't want to stay in the Jim Crow South. And my family grew up on Becks Lake in that area on Newcomb Street. It's not even a street anymore. I don't think any of the houses are over there. So as reading this document, it has been very much eye-opening. If you can see, I've been walking around for a couple of weeks with this, and I've read it, trying to process everything because this is truth. And I want to say this because thank you to the members of the commission that are not African American to actually speak on behalf of the Caucasian community, because the one thing about this is this was truth. And the purpose of truth is not to divide us. And I've had people call me, leave me all kind of messages, call me everything but a child of God, all kind of words. But this isn't to divide our city. The purpose of truth is to guide us. The purpose of acknowledging inequities is not to create enemies. The purpose is to create opportunities. And I just wanted to tell you all, we can acknowledge past wrongs while still building a future that's solid. We can recognize disparities while creating opportunities. And we can confront challenges while refusing to surrender hope. The question before us is not whether we can change the past. The question before us is whether we are willing to change the future. So thank you all for giving us this report. We received this report. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your commitment. To look around this room and see so many different ethnicities represented, this is what South Bend is all about. And I believe all of us, everyone around this table, everyone on whatever side of town you live on, everybody wants a better South Bend. And we're willing to work to make that happen. So thank you all very much. God bless you. And we got to finish with this meeting. Amen. If we can, if we can do this quick, but because we got 10 items on this agenda that we still gotta approve for next week. So please, everybody, let's move quickly and we'll take a picture.
Karen, get you. You could just a little bit closer. Yep. Good.
Everybody, I'm going to give us, I know it's late, but I'm going to give us a 5-minute recess for those who need to go to the restroom. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Everybody say yes.
Yes.
Let's go.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending the zoning ordinance for property located at 1401 South Main Street and 4115 South Main Street, Councilmanic District Number 5 in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
I will entertain a motion to send to the South Bend Plan Commission for public hearing on June 15th and to the Zoning and Annexation Committee for public hearing on and third reading on June 22nd.
So move.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Clerk Toronto, please give 3026 a third reading.
First
A
reading.
first reading. Sorry.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending the zoning ordinance for property located at 223 South Scott Street, 227 South Scott Street, 705 West Wayne Street, 711 West Wayne Street, 713 West Wayne Street, 717 West Wayne Street, 723 West Wayne Street, 725 West Wayne Street, 729 West Wayne Street, and 710 Hole Street, Holes Court, partial ID 018-8154-5549, 018-8154-5550, 018-8154-5563, 018-8154-5556, Councilmanic District Number 1 in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
All right, I will entertain a motion and send to the South Bend Plan Commission for public hearing on June 15th and send to the Zoning and Annexation Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Clerk Toronto, please give 3126 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, authorizing payments in lieu of taxes for Western Avenue LLC.
All right, I will now entertain a motion to send to the Community Investment Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Clerk Toronto, please give 32-26 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending the zoning ordinance for property located at Coal Line Trail, 1241 Riverside, parcel ID number 018-1094-3937, Councilmanic District Number 1, 2, and 4 in the City of South Bend, Indiana.
I will now entertain a motion to send the South Bend Plan Commission for public hearing on June 15th and the Zoning and Annexation Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Clerk Toronto, please give Bill 33-26 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, appropriating additional funds for certain departmental and city service operations for the year 2026 of $32,358 from the general fund number 101, $75,410 from the park and recreation fund number 201, $70,000 from the motor vehicles highway fund number 202, $360,000 from the community investment operating fund number 211, $7,034,537 from the community investment grants fund number 212, $767,050 from the gift donation bequest fund number 217, $37,000 from the unsafe building fund number 219, $100,000 from the loss recovery fund number 227, $122,500 from the code enforcement fund number 230, $1 million from the Local Roads and Streets Fund Number 251, $79,443 from the IT Innovation Fund, Innovation 311 Call Center Fund Number 279, $80,000 from the Indiana River Rescue Fund Number 291, $1,600,000 from the Local Income Tax Economic Development Fund Number 408, $255,000 from the Waterworks Operations Fund Number 620, $994,620 from the Waterworks Capital Fund Number 622, $420,000 from the Sewage Works Operations Fund Number 641.
All right, great job, Clerk Toronto. I now entertain a motion to send to the Personnel and Finance Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Clerk Toronto, please give 34-26 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, for budget transfers for various departments within the City of South Bend, Indiana for the year 2026.
I will now entertain a motion to send to Personnel and Finance for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. All right, Clerk Toronto, please give 35-26 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, amending ordinance number 11233-25, which fixes maximum salaries and wages of appointed officers and non-bargaining employees of executive departments of the City of South Bend for calendar year 2026 to increase salaries of certain positions within the Human Rights Commission, Venue Parks and Arts, and Public Works departments.
All right, I will now entertain a motion to send to the Personnel and Finance Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposition? Motion carries. Clerk Toronto, please give
3626.
Bill 3626 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, authorizing payments in lieu of taxes for Beacon Apartments Preservation LLC.
I will now entertain a motion to send to the Community Investment Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries. All right, Clerk Toronto, please give 37-26 a first reading.
First reading on an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of South Bend, Indiana, authorizing a direct loan to the developer of an economic development facility, Beacon Heights Project, and approving other matters in connection therewith.
I will now entertain a motion to send to the Community Investment Committee for public hearing and third reading on June 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. All in favor? Any opposition? Motion carries. All right, is there any unfinished business? Good. Is there any new business?
I do have some new business, President Lee. I know it's been a long night, but I just want to remind council members for their budget request by June 12th. That would be this Friday, so that I can get the report back to our city controller, Mr. Kyle Willis, that following Friday. Also, VPA is going to be hosting an open house at the TRC this Wednesday from 5:30 to 8 about the final draft for the Rum Village Master Plan, and Transpo will be hosting an open house in downtown South Bend Public Library, Suite D, on Wednesday 10th, the same day, from 4 to 6 for feedback from the public about the proposed changes to routes and schedules due to Senate Bill 1. So I want to make sure everybody had that information so they could not say I didn't communicate it. The last thing is fireworks. It's a problem. Thank you, President Lee.
All right, we'll now go to privilege of the floor. Disrespectful, rude, or disruptive speech or actions will not be tolerated. Such speech or the actions, as well as verbal attacks on any person, may result in an individual without notice forfeiting the remainder of his or her allotted time. Individuals who wish to address the council must state their name and residential address, turn on their camera, Individuals will be limited to 3 minutes only. The maximum time limit for this portion of the meeting shall be 30 minutes. Individuals shall not be permitted to address topics which the council has heard previously on the agenda. The council president may assign a topic raised by an individual during the privilege of the floor to the appropriate council member or request the city clerk to contact a member of the city administration for review, and topics assigned shall be responded to at the next scheduled council meeting. Is there anyone that would like to speak and privilege of the floor?
We have Mr. Frank, who has his camera on.
All right.
And
Thank you,
can Frank, please state your name and address for the record.
Frank Nemec, 1250 East Farrington Circle, South Bend. My request is very short. I would like to request a meeting and invite Councilwoman White and Councilwoman Rogers to a meeting regarding information I have about a renovation of a historic landmark. And that's it.
Thank you very much. We'll make sure she has that information, and if you.
Mr. Frank, we need your contact information. Can you put that in the chat, please?
Yes, I will put my email because my voicemail doesn't work very well. So I will enter that in the chat.
Please, thank you, so we can capture that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
At this time, I do not see anyone else from the public that wishes to speak.
It's 10:23. Thank you all for your time, your talent, and your resources. It was a great meeting tonight. Thank you. God bless you and be safe. This meeting is adjourned.